call the regular council meeting of June 14th, 2021 to order. Looking for an adoption of the agenda. We have one addition that we're going to move as 6A, essential support services option, and the rest of 6 will just get bumped down one. Anything else? So moved, or you have something else to add? Okay. Pardon? Notice of motion. Okay. We'll have that as 6G, notice of motion. Sorry? Make sure your mic is on.
So I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any other discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. Item 3A, approval of the minutes, May 25th, 2021, regular council meeting.
I move that City Council accepts the May 25th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Moved by Councillor Lonsdale. Any errors or omissions? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried. Item 4A, we've got a delegation from Justin Littlechild. Do you have him on the line, Karen?
Hello, can you hear me?
We sure can. Welcome.
Welcome. Good afternoon. Thank you guys for inviting me to be a part of today's meeting. I'm coming to you today to propose a one-of-a-kind event for Wetaskiwin. It's no doubt it's been a long 16 months for all of us, and I think at the end of the day we can all use a laugh. So I'm proposing to you today that we band together and we bring a unique opportunity to Wetaskiwin known as the Fire Pit Comedy Tour. Now, if you're not aware of the Fire Pit Comedy Tour, during the pandemic, the entertainment industry was hit really, really hard. Comedy clubs were closed down, live music events were closed down, everything was shut down. And for a lot of these people, that was their one source of income was doing that comedy show or doing that music event. And two comedians in Edmonton by the name of Lars Callio and Norm Shaw discovered a way to do that safely while bringing it to people's backyards and around their fire pits. And they called it the Fire Pit Comedy Tour. And they started it in April 2020. And since then, they've done 160 shows across Alberta and Saskatchewan. And they have never had one COVID outbreak or COVID case linked back to any one of their shows. So what I'm proposing today is we bring that event to a little bit bigger of a scale instead of a backyard. I wanted to bring that event to Jubilee Park here in Wetaskiwin. I think that would be a great opportunity and make kind of an event out of it and bring a food truck on board, and we can have everybody safely social distance together. And talking with the comedians this morning, they are willing to donate part of the proceeds to a Wetaskiwin charity of our choosing, which I think I would love to choose the Wetaskiwin Health Foundation for all the first responders and everybody that really were the heroes through this pandemic, and offer some kind of incentive for them to be there and to attend that event as well. The event costs only $450 for $20 per person, up to 25 people. And after that, it's $15 per person. And I figured with Jubilee Park, we could have a nice gathering safely, within restrictions, of course, and bring that event and bring the community together and have a great event for the city.
Do you have some dates? Do you have some dates proposed, Justin?
Yes, the proposed date is Friday, July 16th. So the show time would be between 7 and 9 p.m. The show runs approximately 50 to 70 minutes. And the comedians did mention that even though it is a outdoor show and that they are generally clean comedians, there is some adult content, but it's within reason, and it's not comedy club rated, but they just recommended that we have a 16 plus attendance. And I already have the food truck Grays holding the date as well.
In terms of seating or how people are attending, is this a kind of like bring your own chair event?
It'd be a bring your own lawn chair event, or we can set up some picnic tables as well. If that works, we can have a couple picnic tables there. But I was thinking just a bring your own chair thing, so that way we can kind of keep it a little bit safer. And everybody brings their own chair, sits in their own seat.
So just for clarification, the event is $450, and then you sell tickets at $20 a person for the first 20, and then 15 per person more, like if you're over that 20.
$20 per person for the first 25. And then after 25 would be $15 per person, with proceeds going to Wetaskiwin Health Foundation. A portion of the proceeds.
And what are you looking for from the city?
I would love a sponsor to come on board and sponsor it with me. I think if we could partner up and do something, that would be fantastic.
So given the short turnaround, maybe I should ask administration first. What is the process on an event like this to have taken place?
To the chair, they would need to apply through recreation for access to the grounds, and there is I believe, a $50 fee attached to that, so council would likely be looking to waive that. And just to note too, we have been putting conditions on all access permits that they are pending AHS restrictions.
Right, absolutely. Any other questions by anybody else? Councilor Nielsen.
Justin, how do you propose managing the accessing the grounds? Like, are you looking at putting up temporary fencing, or just because without fencing, just anybody can wander in with or without a ticket?
Definitely, I was looking at putting up something temporary. It would only be needed for a few hours, even if we had could find some volunteer people to just kind of stand at each end and bring the people in that have the tickets and have them on the grounds. There is houses around there as residential, so we can't really help if people decide to sit on their porch and listen to the event, but.
And who's responsible for ticket sales?
I would take care of ticket sales. The comedians as well would take care of ticket sales, promotions. They would have it on all their social medias.
Anything else? Councilor Blatz.
Hey, Justin. I just wanted to say that this event sounds awesome, and I'm really happy that you brought this forward because, like you said, it's been a really long 16 months, and I feel like people are really going to be happy to see this. My only question is, have you worked out what percentage of the proceeds will be going to the Wetaskiwin Health Foundation?
I haven't worked that out yet. It's just something the comedians had mentioned this morning. So I was going to further talk with them and see what they want to do with percentage-wise.
Excellent. Thank you.
Anything else? I think just based on time-wise, we wouldn't be able to do something like a grant and aid or that sponsorship through the city. But
Okay.
I will have you work with administration on the logistics of renting or like booking the facility. And I'll
Okay.
work with you offline, and I'll secure sponsorship for that.
Okay, great.
Anything else?
Thank you very much for allowing me to bring this forward to council.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I entertain a motion to accept this information.
That's what I'm doing. I move that city council accepts the presentation as information.
Moved by Councillor Black. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. I have a subsequent motion. Councillor Bronco, do you want to sponsor a comedy event? Just kidding.
Just because he's such a comedian?
Yeah. Because I think that Joe could use a good laugh. Moving along. We have the next delegation from Michael Klaus.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
We can.
We can, Michael.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I've been asked to appear and speak on behalf of my client Megapon with respect to the proposed bylaw 1928-19, essentially an update and a requirement for further record keeping on the part of my clients and similar such businesses. I was asked to make a presentation looking at it from a legal point of view, and my concern, having reviewed the bylaw, is it appears to be patently unreasonable and substantively unfair. Now, if you hear me out, it's enough that you expect a class of business affected by to keep certain electronic records now to be permitted to continue to operate. But the form of same must apparently be satisfactory to an inspector now. And the proposed bylaw sets out no criteria whatsoever upon which the inspector is to base his or her determination, nor does it have a mechanism to review that determination. When we have development issues, our land use bylaw permits the development officer certain discretion, but his discretion or her discretion is subject to review. There's no review provision in this. That sort of thing, the checks and balances that you would normally expect in a bylaw seem to be missing. Further, when one considers the materials and the discussion, I understand that's gone on in the first and second readings, and along the way in the background leading up to the bylaw being proposed, the unfairness and the unreasonableness becomes a little bit more obvious. Apparently, what's, as I understand, being insisted upon is a particular type of electronic record keeping that may readily be accessed and utilized by the police to track stolen property. It has been made clear, as I understand by my client, that no other record keeping option will be acceptable. So the anticipated exercise of discretion by the chosen inspector will actually be arbitrary. In the circumstances, such a revelation of the real intention behind the bylaw is so at odds with what one would assume by the mere wording that it seems to be in bad faith proceeding further with it. The ultimate cost, I understand, of such a record-keeping system appears unduly onerous from the materials and information I understand my client is supplying. The cost of it compared to its effectiveness especially is quite out of proportion. I understand ultimately once my clients have to pay for the system, it's going to cost them in excess of $70,000 a year to facilitate a system to meet with the inspector's favor to track over 140,000 recorded transactions per year, when it would appear from the record keeping thus far, only just over 140 of them are being found to be illegitimate, the sort of transactions that might attract the attention of the police. Even though the number of real legitimate transactions is small, it seems to be way out of proportion of what's necessary in the circumstances. My concern is that we seem to be drifting into the area of obliging businesses such as my client to do police work, to track stolen property, if you will. And when it would appear that most of the transactions are legitimate and only a very small number are ultimately proven to be a concern. This concerns me further is that we then have the city legislating in an area of criminal law. And this isn't the sort of thing that municipalities should be involved in. If the city continues in this regard, I believe my clients intend to to challenge the situation in the courts. Their concern is the bylaw doesn't appear on the face of it to be doing what is appropriate in the circumstances. Do I have any questions or clarifications?
Just give us a minute. I think we've got some thinking going on.
I have no questions.
Councillor Hillgartner.
Through the chair to the inspector, isn't this has been done before by the city of Edmonton and other places, this bylaw?
There are
And-
numerous cities within the province of Alberta that have taken on similar bylaws as this. such
So
as-
you say similar, it's not exactly
Well,
as this, isn't it, would this be a provincially, like, wouldn't it be a bylaw that is equal to all municipalities?
Basing on our research that we've done in relation to a similar bylaw like this actual bylaw was provided by, I believe it was the city of Edmonton. It is very similar wording to the one that's based out of Calgary. And there are numerous other communities in Alberta that have this similar system and similar bylaws.
And the fees associated per transaction, that fee is designated by the province or by who?
The fee that may be administered by BWI, I'm going towards anticipating that that's where we might be headed. It's a per transaction fee and it's negotiated with BWI itself.
And that's standard in the other,
Yes, it is.
okay, thank you.
Councillor Bronco.
Thank you. Two questions, the chair through Keith. You said negotiated the fees. Who do you negotiate with? The owners or the PDFI?
It's done through with the owner of the company in the initial stages, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me. Trent would have those. Initially, he's waiving his transaction fees at the preliminary part of this contract with BWI.
Okay. Correctly. You say the contractors, that you're negotiating with the business owners or PDFI and you guys? And you, the RTD?
It would be the city and BWI.
Not the contract. The city and PDFI, okay. Is the city allowed to tell business owners what to charge or not to charge? To sue?
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, the city has the right to set up any kind of user fees or permit fees or any other fees associated with business.
Do you set up fees with people at garage sales and auction marts?
Are
Or just
auctions
they're doing the
included in
same
this?
thing?
Sorry, this is an item later in the bylaw too, so
Okay.
it's, are there fees for auction companies? Yeah, no.
Thank you. My other question, the chair to Keith.
Okay, Councillor Bronco. So anything regarding this, because it's coming up in the bylaw or in the agenda later on, if you have questions for Mr. Klaus, we'll
Oh,
address
okay.
that. Anything
Okay,
else?
I'll ask the question to Mr. Klaus. Do you know that if there's any ever been challenged this in court before, or are you the first one to say you're going to challenge?
To my knowledge, this would be the first such challenge. I am aware, though, it's a somewhat similar bylaw challenge, not specifically this type of reporting, but another business, if you will, on the edge of the undesirable, if I can call that, which was challenged not too long ago. I believe it was in St. Albert, and it concerned something commonly called a head shop. And it was overturned by the Court of Queen's Bench as being infringing on the criminal law legislative power of the federal government.
Thank you.
My concern, as I said earlier, is that we're starting to create provincial legislation or municipal legislation to do the work for the police here. And now I hear as well, the city is negotiating the cost to the business owner of having that system in place, and yet the specific system is not mentioned in the bylaw. Only some very generic descriptions, which would appear to be easily met, but then when it gets thrown to the inspector to decide, there's no criteria whatsoever indicated. And again, no mechanism to review the reasonableness of the decision made. So we have on the face of it, a bylaw with some very basic descriptives. And then on the other, coming up the other end, we have a situation where arbitrarily the business owner is told you have to do this. And now I hear you're going to have to do it at a rate that the city has negotiated.
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, I actually was in St. Albert with respect to the case that Mr. Klaus is talking about. And the city was overridden, but the reason they were overridden was because they were trying to say that the head shop could not operate in the community. So they did not have a legal standing to not let the head shop operate within the community. And then they had to allow it and put conditions around the permit. So to me, they're two totally different permit.
Conditions put forward by a municipality isn't what was challenged. It was that the municipality was saying that they couldn't operate in the
Exactly,
municipality. Yeah,
exactly.
totally different. Okay, thank you, Mr. Close.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
For C, Mr. Mark Wickland.
Can everyone hear me?
We sure can.
Excellent. I'm here today to ask the council to consider a different approach to the BWI bylaw. I've been in a position where I was a business developer for a 37-store chain throughout Canada and the USA. And during its time, I learned that the big changes, like introducing BWI, can and will have some major hurdles to get over. So what I'm trying to get to is I'm wanting to do a pilot project so that we can help the RCMP, help the pawn shop owners get over their fears. I volunteer my store to do the project for you guys. My store right now is writing about 2,000 pawns a month. I would believe this is one of the busier stores in Wetaskiwin. And this way, you know, we get all over all the hurdles, we get training, we get communication, and hopefully get past some of these fears and get everyone on board. That is it. Questions?
Councilor Billingsley.
Mark, through the chair, how does your pilot project differ from using this company as far as tracking?
Well, my pilot project would be to use BWI for you guys so that we can do a project more or less, let's say 6 months. And then we give the RCMP the opportunity to catch those repeat offenders, maybe help break the big case. And then the pawn shop owners also, they'll get to see how much the expenses are. It gives them time to upgrade systems if need be. And it lets them see that this system is usable.
So what is your project, or what is like?
The pilot project would be, I would be running BWI for the police.
I'm sorry, but how is it your idea of a pilot project different than how you're conducting business today?
Because right now what you guys are trying to do is get all the pawn shops on board with BWI. You guys are getting resistance with that, right? So when we would put in policies and practices into stores, we would pick 2 of our stores, a busy store and a slower store, put that in there, let it run so we can get over all the bumps, all the hurdles, all the backlash. We'd have answers for everything. And then when we introduced it to the rest of the company, it was a smooth transition.
So I guess.
So go ahead.
Is how, with your idea, how are you changing the way you conduct your business? From 5 days ago until this pilot project is taking place. So what's different?
Only difference that we would have is that the software I use, we'd connect to BWI. So my 2 Edmonton stores right now currently use BWI. I can easily call my software provider tomorrow, get the information done. It'd probably take about a week and a half of them uploading all the stuff into my software, and then we'd be ready to run with BWI.
So Mark, you've got stores in Edmonton that currently use BWI that you're familiar with. Why is this not something that we should have in the city if you're operating stores that are currently using this programming?
Because it's a big fee that I spend every single month to catch maybe 1 or 2 stolen items. And and that's in the negative side of BWI. On the positive side of BWI, everything's reported. When you go to sell something, people understand, hey, it goes through the check system. There's less doubt. The only negative side of it is the fees associated to the business. I just got my bills today for my 2 Edmonton stores, and Edmonton has negotiated a deal with them that we have to pay fees now, where for the last 20 years, it's been free. So
then how is your pilot project going to make any difference whatsoever? If you're familiar with the system, your stores in Edmonton are using this system, why would a 6-month or 12-month pilot project in the city of Wetaskiwin using your stores here change anything moving forward?
because it'll open everyone's eyes. It'll open up the RCMP's eyes of how useful it is or how not useful it is, and it'll open up the pawn shop owner's eyes. Because right now you're hesitant with the pawn shop owners are hesitant with you guys to get the changes because there's a ton of fees associated with it, right? So let's just show them the benefit of the system. Have the project show how much we actually get confiscated, how much we don't get confiscated out of our locations. On the flip side, if the RCMP is only visiting me once every 2 months, we know that our system on our pawn shops in Wetaskiwin aren't the problem, right? If out of 4,000 items coming into my store and only 1 is getting confiscated, is it the pawn shops?
So then going back to you running a pilot project here, administration, the RCMP, our CPOs have been in consultation with the pawn shop owners or businesses within the city here for easily a year and a half. Why does it need why does it need more information, or why does it need a pilot project when this has been proposed for quite a while? Wouldn't it then be up to the pawn shop owners and the operators, if this was something that had been worked on, for them to go back and do their research on, understand the program, if this was the way that the RCMP and the CPOs and administration was bringing back to council as a recommendation?
If it was more communication from the RCMP a year and a half ago, probably the pawn shops would be ready for it. But there's been long gaps, no talking, no anything, no of yes, it was, hey, send us your solutions or your other options, and then no response back. So it's still.
What were the alternative solutions to BWI?
Well, I sent a bunch to Trent 2.5 months ago, 3 months ago. And I know some of the other pawn shops sent them in too. So there is options out there. And it all is starting with communication and training, relationship.
This is going to be discussed during our during the agenda item anyway. So if there's any other questions of Mark, we'll take those now. Otherwise, we'll take this as information. Councilor Hilgardner.
I move the city council accepts Mark Wickland's information as information.
Anything further? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. Thanks very much, Mark.
You're welcome.
Um, 4D question. Sorry, go ahead.
I just realized we didn't accept Michael Klaus's delegation as information.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you. Okay.
I move that city council accepts Michael Klaus's delegation as information.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Blatz. Item 4D, we have a delegation from Dr. Sarah with AHS.
Hi there, thanks for having me. We did share a presentation in advance. Is that something that you guys would show, or would you like me to share my screen and show that?
We've got it shared here.
Great,
Let
thank
us
you.
know
So
when you want to move to the next slide.
sure, if it's okay, I'll just say next slide when it's time.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, Mayor Gandam and respected Wetaskiwin City Councilors. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present at today's council meeting. Next slide, please. My name is Dr. Thara Kumar. I'm a physician and medical officer of health for Central Alberta. I'm here today representing the medical officers of health of AHS in Central Zone. We're the physician group responsible for public health in Central Alberta, including Wetaskiwin. And our role is to protect and preserve the health and safety of our communities at a population level. I'm also presenting on behalf of others in the Wetaskiwin healthcare community, including my AHS colleagues, our community paramedics, the Wetaskiwin Primary Care Network, and Maskwacis Health Services. And although I'll be speaking, we do have some representatives in attendance today from these other groups, should you wish to ask them any questions at the end of the presentation. We're here to provide some information about the Integrated Response Hub from a medical and healthcare lens. We understand a decision has been made to discontinue the use of the Civic Building as the location for the Integrated Response Hub service. We want to present as members of the healthcare community to voice our concerns about the potential implications of closing the hub before a new location is found and the adverse health effects that could occur as a result. We suggest that a suitable alternative location be established and operational before the current hub location is closed, so as to avoid a disruption in the healthcare services that the hub provides. Next slide, please. The hub was the answer to a long-standing gap in emergency shelter services for individuals experiencing homelessness in Wetaskiwin. City Council was instrumental in acknowledging this need and facilitating the establishment of the hub in the fall of 2020. Since it opened, the Integrated Response Hub has provided not only shelter, but also social support, mental health care, recovery supports, primary care, and healthcare referrals to approximately 350 Wetaskiwin citizens. Next slide, please. The Integrated Response Hub is truly integrated in the same way a health system is. It's impossible to separate one issue plaguing an individual without looking at the others. Housing, addiction management, cultural support, and mental and physical care come together under one roof at the hub to help our most vulnerable. Physicians and nurse practitioners working with clients at the hub have been able to provide outpatient medical care and prevent visits to the Wetaskiwin Emergency Department and admissions to hospital. In just the 2.5 months from March 15th to May 31st, there were 63 initial visits and 91 follow-up appointments with primary care providers, 14 initial visits and 59 follow-up appointments with addiction physicians, and a total of 227 medical appointments that took place at the hub. At a time when all of our Central Zone acute medical facilities are working at maximum capacity, programs that divert patients away from hospital are invaluable. Next slide, please. Today, I hope to highlight 4 main areas of public health concern that I anticipate could arise if the hub is closed without a functional alternate site in place. First, the impact on COVID-19 related care and the ability for public health to contain outbreaks in the shelter population. Second, the disruption in medical services and preventative care for this population. Third, the adverse effects and increased workload on acute care and emergency departments in and around Wetaskiwin. And fourth, the potential for increased public health and safety concerns for the Wetaskiwin community. Next slide. First and foremost on all of our minds is the COVID-19 pandemic. People experiencing homelessness are among the most vulnerable to the effects of COVID-19. This is because many of them are older or have significant medical comorbidities that put them at risk of severe disease. A recent study in the Canadian Medical Association Journal demonstrated that individuals who were recently without housing were over 20 times as likely to be hospitalized for COVID-19, over 10 times as likely to require intensive care treatment, and over 5 times more likely to die in the immediate period after their COVID-19 infection. This is not only a tragic loss of life, but also puts considerable strain on our already overburdened healthcare system. Just a few weeks after opening, the Wetaskiwin Hub identified a case of COVID-19 among its clients and quickly had an outbreak on their hands. When an outbreak develops, one of the most critical elements to our ability to contain that outbreak and prevent widespread transmission is the ability to efficiently locate and isolate the affected individuals. This is particularly challenging among people experiencing homelessness, as many of these individuals do not have phones or mailing addresses and may relocate frequently. Having the hub at that time ensured that COVID-19 cases and their contacts were identified and isolated in a timely manner. We were also able to use the site at the Civic Building to facilitate low barrier care for this population, including on-site COVID-19 swabbing. This helped us to efficiently identify 47 positive cases and dozens more close contacts. The hub worked with public health as we established an assisted self-isolation hotel in Wetaskiwin, where positive cases from the hub could isolate. However, with limited capacity at the hotel, the hub stepped up and continued to isolate all close contacts on their site, encouraging them to stay isolated on site, monitor themselves for symptoms, and access COVID-19 testing. They also coordinated with local physicians and public health to provide on-site medical support for clients, thus avoiding many hospital admissions. This outbreak was managed successfully because the Wetaskiwin Hub was there. The staff at the hub had relationships with this population. The Civic Building provided a physical space where clients could socially distance while accessing testing, medical care, and PPE. Had the hub not been in place at the time, individuals may have been camping or displaced in unknown locations. It would have been very difficult to identify cases or close contacts or adequately isolate affected individuals. This could have resulted in a large uncontrolled outbreak, which would have put the entire community of Wetaskiwin at risk. Furthermore, it would have put tremendous pressure on the Wetaskiwin Hospital to provide care for these patients and may have resulted in more severe illness or more lives lost. Because the Wetaskiwin Hub was there, this outbreak was contained and managed effectively, keeping both the shelter clients and the residents of Wetaskiwin safe. Next slide, please. The COVID-19 pandemic is unfortunately far from over. This was highlighted when a new outbreak was declared at the hub just a couple of weeks ago, due to a positive case in the community who had several close contacts in the shelter system. Once again, the hub stepped up to facilitate testing and self-isolation for those individuals, connect them with medical care, and divert cases away from the hospital. And they continue to work with us at Public Health to contain the situation. Central Zone continues to see new COVID cases, and particularly as variant strains of COVID become dominant, much remains unknown. What we can say with certainty is that as COVID-19 continues to affect the vulnerable population in Wetaskiwin, without an emergency shelter in place, the implications for the entire community may be significant. Vaccination remains an important step towards normalcy, but it can be difficult to ensure that marginalized groups, including people experiencing homelessness, gain timely access to a vaccine. When vaccine became available for this population, the Wetaskiwin Hub worked closely with public health to coordinate a very successful campaign to vaccinate many of their clients on site. Without the hub, we have concerns that these individuals will not get access to their first and second doses in a timely manner, which will continue to leave them and the surrounding community at risk. Next slide, please. Beyond COVID-19, there are numerous other public health risks associated with this disruption of shelter services. The hub has helped individuals who access the shelter system to also access essential medical services. I believe you heard from Dr. Simon Ward last month that him and his group of physicians are providing much needed preventative and acute medical management to this high-risk population. These services include general preventative care, treatment for substance use disorders, treatment for mental health conditions, and diagnosis and treatment for communicable diseases, including sexually transmitted infections, hepatitis, and HIV. Disrupting these relationships and care pathways not only puts these individuals at risk of becoming unwell and increasing strain on our emergency and acute care services, but also poses a public health risk to the general Wetaskiwin community. Next slide, please. Next, closure of the hub and its services would have a significant impact on acute care services in Wetaskiwin. Since the hub opened last fall, physicians and staff at the Wetaskiwin ED have noted an overwhelmingly positive impact on hospital resources. Prior to the hub being in place, particularly in winter months, patients would come to the ED seeking a place to warm up, eat, or sometimes stay the night. Furthermore, patients without housing who received medical care posed a discharge challenge and often would have to stay in hospital longer than would otherwise be necessary because there is no safe place to discharge them to. Now, Wetaskiwin Acute Care works closely with the hub to coordinate discharge of patients from hospital straight to the hub when they have nowhere else to go, and where patients can receive ongoing care and follow-up without taking up acute care beds longer than necessary. If the hub is closed without a suitable alternate site in place, we stand to lose these benefits for our health system. Next slide. Closure of emergency shelter and programming for individuals experiencing homelessness is almost certain to increase pressure on the local acute care system. Lack of shelter will result in more individuals sleeping outside with no place to go. As weather gets colder, more of these individuals are likely to seek care and shelter in 24/7 services, such as the emergency department. Lack of access to harm reduction services is likely to increase public drug use and therefore public overdoses. Without shelter staff available to respond to these overdoses, these patients will likely end up in hospital. Reduced access to Dr. Ward and his medical team, which provides primary care, addiction care, and withdrawal management services on site, will mean that more patients will seek this care from the hospital. Furthermore, lack of primary and preventative care is likely to lead to more poorly controlled chronic diseases. When common conditions such as diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease are not managed well in the community, patients are more likely to experience dangerous complications requiring hospital-based care for treatment. This may result in more preventable ED visits and more admissions to hospital. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, our acute care system is stretched thinner than ever. Now is certainly not the time to be adding preventable ED visits and hospital admissions to an already overburdened healthcare system. Next slide. While we appreciate and understand concerns that have been brought forward by the downtown businesses and other members of the community, our experience as health providers working with this population tells us that closing the hub will not solve this problem. If the hub closes without a new location in place, over 300 individuals may be transitioned back to homelessness in Wetaskiwin. This will likely lead to an increased number of individuals sleeping rough or camping in public spaces. It will reduce their access to essential medical and harm reduction services. Taken together, this is likely to increase public sleeping, public drug use, as well as increase hazardous materials in public places, such as human waste, used personal hygiene items, and needles. This would not only fail to address the concerns raised by the business community, but may in fact pose a greater risk to the health and safety of community members. However, the concerns expressed by these groups are very real and do need to be addressed. I do believe that there are strategies besides closure of the shelter that would more effectively address the community concerns that have been brought up by the shelter's presence. Things like increased security, more daytime programming options, and provision of more services on site are strategies that other cities have employed so that their shelter can coexist with the surrounding communities and both can safely thrive together. Should the council wish to explore these other solutions further, our team of Central Zone Medical Officers of Health and our public health group would be happy to offer input at any time. Next slide, please. For all of the reasons I've outlined, we as public health professionals are concerned about the negative impact that this shelter closure could have on the Wetaskiwin community unless a suitable alternative site is first established. As community leaders, we are all responsible for our most vulnerable citizens. City Council's decision to allow the hub to open last fall has done tremendous good for the people of Wetaskiwin. We support the hub and the work that's accomplished there by both the Open Door and the healthcare teams involved. We respectfully ask that City Council consider some options to help the hub transition from the space it's in now to wherever its next base may be. Among those options may include a temporary extension for the use of the Civic Building until a safe and appropriate alternative location can be identified and prepared. Allowing time for this transition will prevent a risky disruption of essential services during an infectious disease pandemic and will avoid significant risk to the public. We all share a common goal of protecting the health and safety of the Wetaskiwin community, and we would be happy to provide input to council to help achieve this through alternative solutions. Thank you for your time and consideration of this matter. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today, and myself and the rest of our delegation would be happy to take questions at this time.
Thank you, Doctor. I'll entertain a motion to accept this information, and then we can open it up to questions. Councillor Billingsley, any questions, comments? I have a few questions, Doctor. So you had made the comment about the some of the options that we could have to mitigate the risks or issues that we were seeing downtown, which is fantastic to hear now. But when council had concerns previous to the closure of the hub, there didn't seem to be much of an open dialogue on what AHS or the province would be doing to help mitigate the risk for the business owners downtown. So then my question would be, if you're asking the city to extend the closure for 12 months or however long until we get a suitable location, what is AHS or the province willing to do to help the city of Wetaskiwin mitigate the issues that we've seen downtown, so that we can accommodate the hub in its current location before a new one is found?
Thank you for that question. Yes, I mean, certainly I've worked as a medical officer of health since before the hub opened here. And unfortunately, I don't believe that the medical officers of health, at least no messaging reached us that City Council was looking to speak with us about those solutions. So I apologize if there is a miscommunication there. But certainly we'd be happy to provide input. We do work closely with all of our shelters throughout the zone to help them design their programming and their structure, and offer input and solutions and problem solving together as to ways that we can mitigate these types of risks. As I've said, the Open Door Society and the Wetaskiwin Hub have had a very open dialogue with public health to do just that and to problem solve around issues that have come up, such as the COVID outbreaks. And we would certainly be happy to have those conversations with yourselves, with the downtown business owners, and with the hub staff to see exactly what the issues are and look at what solutions have been tried and used in other places that might be a good fit. I think that every community is a little bit different and the problems are unique to that community. So we would need to look closely and discuss with you guys to see what exactly are the specific issues coming up around the location of the hub. And then we could certainly talk about some other alternative solutions, whether that be having more of an outdoor space that's designated for hub users to be in, or having enhanced security measures, having enhanced cleanup measures. Those kinds of things are all conversations we've had in other parts of the zone, and we'd be happy to do that with you guys as well.
So if you, and I apologize that maybe the city didn't reach out to you directly regarding the issues, but if you've had an open dialogue with the Open Door, none of these issues or concerns have been brought forward by the Open Door to your agency?
Well, since this conversation happened at City Council, we have been involved in the conversation. And I know that the Open Door Society was working prior to this to identify an alternate location. I understand that the issue that was being run into is that there wasn't an alternate location that was appropriately zoned, that had been readily identified. So of course, zoning is not something that we would be able to speak to. I think that's more in your area of expertise.
No, I'm not speaking to that. I'm talking about the issues and concerns that the city of Wetaskiwin has addressed with the Open Door regarding the hub in its current location.
Mhm.
None of those concerns were brought forward to your agency?
Since the City Council decision, they have been, but
Prior to. So we've had an ongoing communication through the Open Door on issues and concerns that the community has in terms of the location of the hub. The city of Wetaskiwin increased foot patrols with the CPOs and RCMPs to help mitigate some of those risks. So my question is, if you've had an open communication with the Open Door, were any of those concerns brought forward prior to the closure of, or the ending of the lease agreement with the Open Door?
Yeah, certainly they've always been communicating with us in terms of ways to improve services on site, keep their individuals more on site, prevent the need to wander to other locations. We had been hearing from RCMP locally that they were actually quite happy with the reduction in crime, reduction in arson, reduction in vandalism around that area. So we were under the impression that that was actually a very positive thing that had come from this. We'd also been hearing about the reduction in emergency visits and acute care visits.
Yes,
So
I'm well,
we were-
no, but I'm well aware of all of the other benefits that the hub has had, and which is why I've been a strong supporter of the hub, regardless of its location. So again, I'm not talking about the benefits that have happened. I'm talking about the issues that the city has shared with regards to the concerns, the perceived safety issues, increased, and then you can't tie it directly back to just the hub being where it is, but the increased graffiti, all of the other concerns and issues that the city has brought forward to the open door. My question is were those concerns brought to your agency as you're talking about working with the city to try to mitigate some of those issues now? I'm asking if those issues were talked about prior to the motion made to end the lease agreement.
Specifically with regards to the concerns of the business community, I was not part of any conversations prior to the decision to terminate the lease.
So moving forward then, how is it that you feel you can help mitigate some of these issues that we have?
As I said, we've worked with all of our communities in Central Zone that offer shelter services to try to enhance their success in their locations. And we work with city councils as well with regard to trying to ensure that these services are being offered in a way that is of benefit to everyone in the community. So we'd be happy to, as I said, share other models for what's been used in terms of improving security measures, trying to improve cleanup protocols, trying to introduce more programs on site that might keep individuals on site as opposed to having people leaving the hub and going into other parts of the community. And these are all the kinds of things we'd be happy to work with the open door or with yourselves to try to organize.
Sure. Councilor Hillgarner.
Through the chair to the doctor. Have you toured this facility lately?
No, I personally have not.
Do you know that the washroom facilities are inadequate for that building?
I was not aware of that, no. But I do want to emphasize that our intention is not to say that the hub needs to stay at the civic building. Really, our role is to protect, as I said, the health of the population. And we just want to ensure that an alternate site that's appropriate is established before the hub is closed to avoid that disruption. It doesn't mean they have to stay put where they are, but we just hope that we can work with City Council and with the hub to try to find an alternative space and ensure that that space is ready to operate before the current location is closed.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Nielsen.
Thank you. Thank you for your report, Doctor. I guess I find your comments about reaching out to our community to help mitigate some of the problems that the mayor has been talking about is kind of like chasing the horse after the barn door's been left open. With all due respect, we have been very consistent in our messaging to Open Door about what our concerns are for our community, for our downtown businesses, for the area around the hub. And for the most part, I would suggest that it's fallen on deaf ears, and to suggest that you haven't even been involved in any of those conversations is disheartening, to say the least, because perhaps had that kind of open communication between Open Door and yourself taken place, we may have gotten to some of those issues that have simply been ignored to the point where we get to where we are and having to close the hub. In addition to that, I guess I would like to comment that I've over the course of the time that the hub has been operating, I think our community has shown over the history of being very caring and compassionate and empathetic. And everyone I've talked to in our community thinks there needs to be something happening in our community for the vulnerable population. The difficulty is, I don't know what it is. I don't really know what the numbers are. You're the first person that actually came forward with statistics today. And in the 6 months previously, we've had nothing but anecdotal notes saying we're serving 150, then 200, and then 200 north, and so on. We've heard countless anecdotal notes that there's huge savings to the RCMP and the hospital. but none of that's been substantiated by any kind of statistics, anecdotal. We've had conflicting messages.
I'm gonna just stop you there for a second, that you have seen statistics from both the RCMP and then from the Open Door. Just to say that there haven't been statistics being brought forward, especially from the RCMP on the reduction in overnight stays, the crime reduction, however else you want to go with it. There have definitely been statistics being presented to council.
We've asked for some specific information that did not come forward. And we've heard conflicting messages that we've had 250 of these vulnerable population in our community. They're all from our community. But in the next breath, we also hear that if the hub closes, half of them will leave because they're not from this community. We've had increase even in this last week. We've had incidents of a hammer assault. We've had a machete incident on Main Street. And I've lived in this community 35 years, and I've not seen this kind of activity in our community before now. So I wish we would have had this opportunity to hear your offer earlier. Perhaps we could have mitigated many of the concerns that we have shared with Open Door. But unfortunately, that didn't transpire. And so this council took it upon themselves to revoke the lease to ensure the safety of our downtown community. I do appreciate your commitment to the vulnerable population. And I do believe, and I'll reiterate, I believe our community wants to do something to help the vulnerable population, but not in the format that it's currently existing. Thank you.
And I'll remind Councillor Nielsen that prior to the hub opening up, Wetaskiwin was still #1 in the province of Alberta for the most dangerous city. So the hub did not bring these new assaults, and instances of crime, whether it's property or personal, have always been going on in the city. So I think the almost insinuation that the types of events that have happened, whether it was today or over the last 2 weeks or 6 months since the hub's been open, aren't new to the city of Wetaskiwin.
I would say the volume of those things are, and so we will disagree on that.
Respond. I do want to say that I too wish these conversations had happened sooner, and I think perhaps it's not well known in general to many groups that public health is involved in this type of work. And so going forward, I certainly hope that you never hesitate to reach out to public health when there's issues around things like shelter and care for the vulnerable population. But I do also want to agree that these individuals who are accessing the hub didn't come out of nowhere. They were clearly there before, and now they have a place to be. And my concern is that if this hub is closed without an alternate site established, those individuals are still going to be in Wetaskiwin, only without a place to shelter, without a place to go, except for public streets. And one thing I will say that I've been very impressed with in the way that the hub has operated so far is that they really have a goal towards helping people exit homelessness and no longer need their services. I've heard them say multiple times that best case scenario, they wouldn't even be needed in a few years, because the hope is that as people get into these services, get connected to healthcare, get connected to housing, get connected to addiction treatment, that they can actually be stabilized and housed independently so these services are not so needed. That's certainly always our goal for this group. And although I know it does take time to see those kinds of changes, I'm very hopeful that that could be the case in the future for Wetaskiwin.
Anyone else? Thank you very much for your presentation. Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Item 5A, pawn shop, second dealer, and scrap metal dealer bylaw 1994-21. Welcome, Sergeant.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I'm before you again this evening, just with that temporary pawn shop bylaw for secondhand dealers, pawn shops, 1994-21. Just again, to go over the purposes that back in 2019, it was recommended that we review the pawn shop bylaw based on crime index, property crime, the issues that the RCMP were seeing. We did review the current bylaw 1293-94 and its amendments, found that it was no longer serving the purpose that it was intended for. So, and meeting the reporting requirements for pawn shops, secondhand dealers, and scrap metal dealers. Well, the current bylaw does require that businesses keep a record of all purchases and sale of goods and articles. It had no requirements for those dealers to forward this information electronically to law enforcement. On April 22nd, we brought the proposed pawn shop, secondhand dealer, and scrap metal bylaw 199421 and was presented to council, and we did receive first and second reading. To continue with open communication with our stakeholders, we did send out a letter to all the affected pawn shops with the proposed bylaw receiving first and second reading. And then to date, we did receive one email response from one pawn shop owner, as well as you had the two delegations before you today. As well as we did send the bylaw off for one final review by our legal counsel in regards to the enforcement of the bylaw, as well as the concerns with fees being forwarded on to our pawn shop dealers. The reply back that we got from legal counsel for the city was that the bylaw was enforceable, as well as there was section and provisions under the Municipal Government Act to pass on those fees and transaction fees on to the pawn shop owners themselves. So through the review too, we also had a look at the strategic plan that was set forth from 2018 to 2022 and found that it wasn't meeting the requirements of providing a safe and secure community in regards to property crime and assisting the RCMP in regards to stolen property. So upon the final review, as well as technology, as noted in the previous delegation here as well, we did on purpose leave the electronic means quite vague based on the fact that technology does change at a lightning pace. So therefore that did allow us to look at multiple platforms and pick the best solution at that time. And then also it allows us to look forward to the future and pick other choices as technology improves over the years. So as noted, there is some legal risk, or sorry, financial, sorry, that yes, the startup cost for the proposed bylaw from BWI is $400 a year, is the software fee, yearly fee, as well as there would be a per transaction fee. With that intention, we've made a partnership between myself and the inspector that for the first year of implementation, we did cover that cost to allow them to get used to it, to implement it, to train it. All of that cost is covered by the city and the RCMP, as well as the first 5 years, we have no transaction fee passed on to the pawn shop owners and their customers. So the first 5 years is waived from BDY. After the first 5 years, they would be responsible for those fees. Sorry. As part of the review, again, I did, like I said, talk to council in regards to the concerns of the electronic means mentioned in the bylaw. As I alluded, that the Municipal Government Act does allow for us to establish fees, license, permits, and approvals. As also, they noted that there's always risk from any ratepayer that will challenge this new bylaw if there are legitimate grounds to do so. And then if a challenge is received by administration, there will be associated legal costs, which would be dependent on the number of challenges and the length of time spent in court, which would result in the budget increase to legal expenses. The proposed bylaw would result in improved tracking for the enforcement agencies and the RCMP and to better control the items being illegally sold. This is one of the recommended strategies that was founded in the 2018 to 2022 strategic plan to build a safe community. As far as organizational, again, we'll just reiterate that administration will have some additional time required to work with the software contractor that is chosen by enforcement services and the RCMP in the initial implementation of the software, as well as administration may have some increased time and expenses spent in court with the enforcement of this proposed bylaw in regards to obtaining compliance and any violations found during site visits and random checks by the RCMP and enforcement services. Any questions?
You're done?
Yeah, I'm done,
Okay,
sorry.
I'll entertain a motion and then we'll get right into questions. Councillor Blatz.
I move that City Council approve third and final reading of bylaw 1994-21 being the pawn shop, secondhand dealer, and scrap metal dealer bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Any questions? Councillor Billingsley.
Through the mayor to Trent. Earlier we had a presentation from Mark Wickland. And I guess my question is, he threw some numbers at us about the number of stolen pieces being a very small percentage of all the pieces that they pawn. And I guess the bottom line is, will the extra expense for these pawn shops, will it actually curb stolen goods?
So yeah, I mean, obviously,
I mean, that's really what this is about. We're not trying to penalize them.
no.
We're trying to lower crime in our community. But if it's not going to do that, what's the point?
At this point, because this is a new system, this was presented to council previously over and over again to give another tool to crime, to assist in crime prevention. We don't have that data because there is no tracking. I mean, before it's paper. At that time, if you wanted us to go through thousands of pages of pawn goods, then pay someone to reference that to CPIC to find out if that's item stolen. This is now a tool that, so I said, yeah, unfortunately, that there's just no data because the resources weren't available to analyze all the written data that was provided.
Earlier, Inspector Durant said that Calgary, Edmonton use something similar to this. Do they see this? I mean, if it helps, then it's worth doing. If it's a bunch of work for these business owners, well, it's really not.
So
if it's not going to lower the amount of crime.
So yeah, they speak to like who was using it. So right now, almost every major city in Alberta uses it, as well as in 2020, as I presented in April, the provincial government now has mandated the same system for scrap dealers. And they actually have their first charge that just happened in the city of Leduc. So it has helped.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
I ran the numbers through our system on the number of pieces of stolen property that I was able to find for 2 years running. And that was just by luck. If a person was able to find that item, it was a unique item that they were able to find in one of the pawn shops, they would call us, we would then go seize it, lay the appropriate charges, so on and so forth. There was at least 80 occurrences where I found in a 2-year period where we found stolen property in the pawn shops in Wetaskiwin. No pawn shop was immune. There were some that were better than others. However, there was at least 80 files where we could have done that sort of work. I have to stress the point that these items were rather unique. For one, there was like 8 First Nations blankets that were stolen and pawned at several different pawn shops in town. Because those items were unique, they were easy to find. They were easy to track. A red jingle dress that showed up at a pawn shop, but we were able to track that because it was a unique item. This database that we're looking to go towards, if the numbers which were presented here this afternoon, and we've heard these numbers before, 140,000 transactions, this goes to why we need an electronic database. We cannot search through 140,000 items a year to try and find stolen property.
Thank you.
Councillor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler. Chair through Trent. Trent, we had before discussion, before the presentation, you had said it's the city and PDFI that set the rate for this 5 years from now because you're waiving everything for your fees, whatever, for the next 4 years. Does the city of Wetaskiwin receive any percentage of this $140,000 in 5 years?
No, the city doesn't receive any of that funding. All the service fee and the transactions fee is to fund the maintenance of the system.
Goes into that PDFI, whoever, the business, whoever owns it.
Whoever owns it. Just like any service that's provided to the city, they benefit.
So I have a problem with this. I could see, I think it's $1 a transaction the city's going to be charging them.
eventually it's between 50 cents to $1. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to nail that down just due to
So-
longevity, but
Then again, 5 years from now, if these guys want to say we want $1.25, comes to the city and the city says $1.25 and they get $1.25, correct?
yeah, or the city has at that joint its sole discretion to discontinue and find another solution.
You know, I've always said, the less the government knows what the public does, the better, because the information you got, to me, is privacy. It's also a money grab, I see. But I guess that's my commitment. Years ago, we never had a problem. We always had the same. There was probably more pawn shops back then. You guys too busy to go to the pawn shop, pick up your documents and do it yourself, so. Thank you.
You said that the city doesn't make any, like, there's no, yeah, so it's not a money grab by the city.
Yeah, the city receives no funding from any of the transaction fees.
Yeah, and to say that we didn't have an issue before, if we can decrease the amount of thefts that are going on in the city based on some software that can be introduced to the business,
I understand, Tyler, but I also have a big issue that I'm a shopaholic, so I'm addicted to, maybe I should go to Hut to get help. But when I go to pawn shops or auction and grindings are off the tools that they're selling there, there's no difference between them and a pawn shop. And nobody monitors them. There are professional people who go buy stuff just to sell it separately on a garage sale. There's a lot of, but anyways, we're not going to get into that debate because it's useless.
there's professional people buying what to sell at a garage sale?
Garage sales, yeah, they go buy the pawn shop, they know, I just find it a money grab. For who? I don't know. It's sure ain't for the city. But I just don't want to come down 5 years down the road that coffee's bad for the Alberta health. We're going to be charging a nickel every time a coffee cup is sold. So where does it stop?
Well, just so we're clear, this isn't a money grab for the city. It's not.
It's not for the, I mean, we know, I wish it was for the city.
Councilor Hillgartner.
Through the chair to Trent. So like scrap dealers and stuff, so this would help us, like, how would we track catalytic converters being stolen? Like, they would have to, like, what would be the procedure? Like, if you pulled up to a scrap dealer and you saw a whole bunch of catalytic converter, you could say where they come from, or do they have to register when they buy them from somebody? They got to register that.
So we're using the same process as the government as far as their scrap dealers. So same process, photo ID, photo of the picture of the person pawning it, what they're pawning, all the serial numbers to that, everything that they're pawning has to have a part number. All of that has to be in there before they can pawn it.
Okay, so let's say you go to that dealer and they don't have that information, but you see a whole bunch of stuff sitting there.
Yeah.
Now, is that a criminal offense that they get charged with, or what
No,
is it? Like,
it's just
it's just a slap on the wrist.
It's a compliance
they don't do
fine.
that?
No, it's a compliance fine. So no different than the Scrap Dealer Act that's out there right now. It's a fine for non-compliance, for not tracking it properly.
Okay, so then going to the pawn shops, it'd be the similar thing. So if there's a item out there, a spare tire at the wheel or something.
Yeah, through the chair to Councilor Hill, same thing. If we go in there and this thing, items on the shelf, we do a quick spot check with our tablets there and it's not in there, there's a fine.
So it's a fine that they get then?
Yeah, because they're not tracking the item in the,
And who issues the fine? Like who?
either the RCMP or ourselves.
So it's
CP.
not the city of Wetaskiwin issuing the fine, it's provincial fine?
It's still a municipal bylaw, so it's a municipal fine.
Okay,
It's a city of Wetaskiwin bylaw fine, which can be issued by an RCMP member, CPO, or a bylaw officer.
Okay.
Three of us, yeah.
thank you.
And one of the comments made during one of the delegations was that this information wasn't in the motion or in the agenda, and it's very clearly stated here that The waiving of the transaction fees for the first 5 years are in there, worked through by the RCMP and the municipality. The name of the company that we're working with is in there, the programming is in there. So all of that information is in the actual motion or in the agenda. So I just wanted to clear that up too, that through that delegation, that information is available. It wasn't hidden. Some of the concerns that were brought forward, sorry, does anybody have anything else? Some of the concerns that were brought forward was just about the discretion of the inspector. So how would we work against that, or how do you?
So, yeah, so for the purpose of the bylaw too, like I said, it's very vague. And so for instance, electronic means was done that on purpose to be fair. So right now, BWI is the software that we've been, done enough review of and research on that meets the needs now. We did ask the owners to give us some. They did supply some. Unfortunately, some of it was USB stick. Well, we're back to the paper copy going through spreadsheets, so that wasn't going to meet our needs. There's another one, same thing. It didn't have the searchability that the law enforcement needs to be 24 hours to go in there and search for the records. So right now, unfortunately, yes, Business Watch, which is the rapid system, is the only one that's currently here. But if, 5 years, because that's the contract we're going to sign to get that fees waived. If in 5 years something else comes out, we'll research that, propose that software, and go on if it meets, it's more efficient, it's cheaper, all of that is built in there to be fair. But like I said, currently right now, yes, because all the major cities we reviewed, they're all using it. Like I said, 2020 November, the Alberta government did theirs. They went to BWI, so we're just going online to because we're all interconnected and can share information. So same thing, once we go to the system, there is a possibility that, Keith alluded that they won't pawn it here anymore. They're gonna go pawn it somewhere else. So now we have property crime here, but they pawn it in Leduc, let's say, but now this system interconnects all the agencies together so we can search that anywhere in Alberta.
Right, so it's not just specific to a task one.
It's not just specific to a task one.
That was all I had. You answered the other questions in your presentation. Thanks. Anything else? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Five B, online service fee for credit card payments of property taxes.
That's Alan. Alan, you can go.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't sure. Through the mayor to the rest of council, before you is a request for decision of charging a service fee for credit card payments of property taxes online. Currently, the city doesn't charge any fees for property taxes because we don't accept credit card payments for property taxes because of the percentages charged by the respective credit card companies in Monaris. With the introduction of virtual city hall, there is the ability for the city to charge a service fee for the payment of property taxes, as it is done online. It's not done within the municipal hall or at the rec center. Effectively, what Visa Canada or Visa Worldwide has said is that credit card absent transactions can have a fee to a maximum of 2.5% charged to the users who pay in those situations, i.e. online. So what staff is proposing is to allow residents, property owners to pay their property taxes through credit cards. We will recover 2.5% on the payments and make that extra convenience for those property owners who forgot about paying their taxes, and give them some time to do it on their credit cards. before you, staff is recommending a 2.5% service fee for property taxes payments by credit cards while utilizing virtual City Hall. Any questions?
Just for clarification, Alan, I don't see anything on here about American Express. Is that something that you entertained?
Yes, through the mayor to the councillor and the public. Yes, these are just the major players, Visa, MasterCard, and they have the majority of the information out there of what they will accept and what they won't accept. The only one that is very specific is Visa. They put a limit of 2.5% for Visa payments maximum. So that's what we've done. It ranges between payments from anywhere from 0.98% to 2% of the transaction value. And then there's a fee that Moneris charges of 0.75% plus 15 cents per transaction. So we believe that the 2.5% on average will address the cost that will come to the city for accepting credit card payments online for property taxes. If council chooses the other option is with virtual City Hall is not to accept credit card payments and just allow it to be a information tool for residents to check on their property taxes and the status. The city of Leduc does that. They don't charge a convenience fee or sorry, a service fee.
I was going to make a motion. I move that City Council gives first reading to Master Rates Amendment Bylaw 1996-21 as presented.
Question, Chair, to Al. Al, you have a credit or a debit card here, 1.5%. Is that normal for us if somebody wanted to come and pay their taxes on a debit card? Because I understood nobody charged on the debit card, whatever the cost is, but a MasterCard or Visa, I understand that 2.5 on top of that, because some people are getting air miles or whatever. But you got 1.5% charge per debit card. That's cash, as it comes right out of the account.
Through the mayor to council. No, I'm not recommending that. It's only in relationship to online credit cards payments, not debit cards. It should be noticed that or noted that Moneris now, when they charge their fees, look at there's Visa debit cards.
Yeah,
is that they even take their normal debit cards and treat it as a credit card transaction.
Yeah, but
they just changed that now. Currently, we accept debit card payments and Visa payments for recreation, for utilities, and we don't charge any service fee on that. We're only recommending the service fee for, again, online payments for property taxes, not online payments for utilities, because currently people can come in and pay that at the office or at the rec center, and they don't get charged that. So again, it's just for property taxes and only can be charged through virtual City Hall or an online payment service.
So would our program, when you're doing online paying for your taxes and you're putting your MasterCard through it, punching in all your codes and everything, will it say right there, you will be charged 2.5% or 3%, or so they can either decline or pay for it?
That is correct. That's a requirement, yes.
Thank you.
Through the chair to Al. No, I think this is a great idea, and being that it's being started as a new way to pay the taxes, if the fees are right out front, then people know right offhand that that's what it's going to be, and going to the new ways, that's, I think it's great idea. There you go. I move the city council give second reading to master rates amendment bylaw 1996-21 as presented. Move that city council gives unanimous consent to master rates bylaw amendment, or sorry, master rates amendment bylaw 1996-21. Just one word you said. I move that city council gives third and final reading to master rates amendment bylaw 1996-21 as presented.
Moved by Counselor Billingsley. Anybody else of the 9-year-old council here?
Well, no, it's just the darn mask. You can't hear it clearly. That's all. That's all I'm blaming it on.
They were talking about it on a show one time and somebody kept saying the mask debate. Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 6A, which was added, is the essential support services option.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. The purpose of the essential support services option is for administration to give council options for consideration related to a location of an addiction support facility within our community for the vulnerable population. The recommendation is that council approve the report titled Essential Services Support Option dated June 14th, 2021, and direct administration to action the next steps as outlined in the report. The background information, administration has been involved in research and discussions to identify alternative locations for required community services to combat the significant addictions and mental health challenges in our community. Administration has been working with other orders of government through the mayor to secure funding commitments for these services. Recently, we became aware of an option that would begin to address some of the social challenges within our community, but would require support from City Council through the following actions. The Minister's Office is asking that City Council provide a letter of support for the services being offered through a lease agreement between a private firm in Wetaskiwin and the Government of Alberta to operate within our community. They're asking that City Council agree to a land swap with a local developer so that they may construct a facility at 5800 and or 5937 A Avenue. The exact area is yet to be determined, but would be between 2 and 4 acres. They're also asking that council provide unified support through a commitment to approve a direct control designation for the newly formed parcel, and that council provide support through a commitment to approve the permit, a direct control permit for services related to addictions treatment, detox, or any other support services as deemed necessary by the ministry responsible for leasing the facility. The number 5 is one request for consideration, although this is not dependent on the previous ones mentioned, is that council consider giving it an extension to the hub services at its current location until the addiction and detox facility is functional. This would help provide bridge services until help can be provided at this new location. I should note as well that administration, as part of this, would put together a comprehensive communication and safety plan for this new location. So on page 2 of the document presented, it shows the 2 locations for the swap. So the city owned lands at on 37th A Avenue. We estimate between the 2 and 4 acres to be $250,000 to $400,000 in value. And then the swapped parcel that we would take is shown in the second drawing. We previously had this parcel assessed for other purposes. It's located along 64th Street and 47th Avenue and was valued at $683,000. We do have we have been having discussions about the potential use of this parcel with respect to the airport and feel that it could be valuable for the city. So the next steps that we're asking council to approve as part of this motion are that administration create a subdivision to cleave off a parcel from the PUL that is located at 5900 37A Avenue and or the municipal reserve located at 5800 37A Avenue. There will be some costs related to subdivision and survey. I would imagine no more than $6,000 in total. The land swap would include equal amount of land given up as MR or PUL to be dedicated in the other parcel. So sorry, I'm just trying to find the amount there. The 63 acres or almost 65 acres of the other location. If 2 acres of PUL or MR are subdivided on the city-owned land, we would ensure that that equal amount is also subdivided off of the new parcel and dedicated as MR so that it couldn't be developed. Deem the road allowance was also on there as a potential option, but we're thinking that we might not need it, but if we do, deem the road allowance as surplus, deem the subdivided property as surplus so that they could come in front of council to be subdivided and traded. And then zone the new parcel as direct control. This would allow council to put conditions on a direct control permit for whatever operations went into the facility. And then, of course, part of this is that administration would develop a comprehensive communication and safety strategy plan with the surrounding businesses at this location. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions after the motion.
We're probably going to need some clarification prior to a motion being made.
Okay.
So we'll open it up to questions. Councillor Billingsley.
Sue, through the chair, item 4. Provide support through a commitment, approve a permit for service related to addiction treatments detox, comma, or any other support services. So is this up for negotiation? Or so in other words, how I read that is they decide.
When I was drafting this up and running it past the minister's office, at the time we were thinking about AHS offices, so support services from whichever agents or ministry is going to be providing these services. Council definitely has the ability to say these are the services that can be provided through the direct control permit.
Okay.
Councillor Nielsen.
Further to that, I guess the question related to number 4. So if conditions can be established through direct control, why wouldn't you make that part of your condition of land swap? So that the potential developer and the potential leaser are all aware. And I don't mind the document as written, addictions treatment and detox. I'm not even concerned necessarily in the future of adding other support services, but I worry off the top that we're trying to create too much too fast, especially in light of what we've just experienced in our community. I'm certainly in favor of addictions treatment and detox, and in the future would be fully supportive, I think, of other support services, depending on what those support services would be coming forward to council from. So I'm like Dean. I sort of worry that it unfolds not unlike we have recently experienced, where we move very quickly to additional supports. And not that there's anything wrong with additional supports, but let's walk before we run, I guess, from my perspective.
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, we could end number 4 with detox period. and remove the rest. This isn't part of the motion anyways. This is just the background report, and I'm fine communicating that to the ministry. I mean, they're going to bring in the services related to addictions, treatment, and detox. We don't need to have the rest on there.
But also, I guess somehow, I'd like to at least extend your open further discussion down the road on broader wraparound services.
Right.
I'm finished, so I can't talk. But my mic's on now, Karen. No, I guess good to end it there, but extend the olive branch, but there may be more in the future that we want to ensure that there are further discussions available for more wraparound services as AHS decides they want to potentially expand those services, that we're open to those conversations for sure.
Councillor Lonsdale.
Thank you. Through the chair to Sue. You know, I know the amount of work that has gone into this whole situation, and I appreciate that. And it's nice that other levels of government are really noticing that we have a need here and are willing to step up now. But just looking at number 5 and an extension for the hub services, as we all know, August 10th is the closing date as it stands right now. If an extension was to be provided, can you just give me a rough time frame as to how long that would be? Because that's going to be one of the major questions coming out of especially our downtown community.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Lonsdale, the minister had asked for 4 months with a recognition that certain aspects of the facility may be able to open earlier and be phased in, and once other supports are provided, they figured 4 months would be sufficient.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hilgert.
Through the chair to Sue. I would prefer number 5 being removed because that facility is not adequate for what it's being used right now. There is no washrooms. I understand we're trucking people now to the memorial for washrooms. Is that correct? How many washrooms? Is there one washroom working?
There's 5 washrooms in the facility.
And how many are working? Because they're using other washrooms, so.
We haven't been told that they're shipping people anywhere, and we certainly haven't been asked for
Well, we can't get
to
in there.
use memorial.
Yeah. But that's my major concern. If the washrooms aren't working, they're plugged and so forth. Yeah, that facility is not adequate for what it's being used. So that has to be addressed. Plus the security, who's going to pay for the security?
Right, so through the chair to Councillor Hildgartner, there is a motion in front of council later to consider security. And I think based on the presentation today, when that discussion comes up, it could be one of the options that we look to an outside agency to help support that.
So when was the last time one of our maintenance guys went through that building? Do you know?
They go to the building every day. I just don't know how in depth they go.
Could we have a report on the building, on the status? The inside, the mechanical maintenance and so forth?
So through the mayor, Councillor Hillgartner, in the agreement that we have with the Open Door, our facilities guys are responsible for any of the building systems. So that would be your mechanical, HVAC, plumbing, things like if a sink's broken, busted, or toilet's busted, that is the responsibility of the Open Door. I don't we get reports back on that from our facilities crew regularly, but do get regular or updates if there's something that's arisen and we want to get on top of it. So for example, some of our vulnerable population were accessing the roof, which was a security risk, and we've in the past spent the money, a couple $100 to put some metal sheeting up so they can't access those areas. Pretty minor stuff, but that's the only time our facilities guys would be getting involved.
And just to clarify, through that, excuse me, that lease agreement, that any damage done to the building is at the responsibility of the Open Door, not the city.
Correct.
Councillor Billingsley.
I don't, I'm in agreement with not to keep the civic building in use. If they're moving along 4 to 5 months from now to have this in place, and it's just detox, I guess my question is how many clients are using just the detox portion of the hub? And if it's whatever number that is for the next 4 or 5 months, can those folks be sent to a different detox center until this one's ready to go?
Through the chair to Councillor Billingsley, I don't know those numbers. I could look into it. This number 5 is certainly not part of a motion that we're looking at. And I guess because there is a motion already, this would need to come as a separate motion if council did want to consider that.
Thank you.
Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you.
No, Councillor
Tyler.
Nielsen. You're after. You guys kind of look alike, but I can see.
Thank you, through the chair.
Not Big Joe.
Sue, it's my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's my understanding that once a motion has been voted on by council, there's a time element by which it can't be revisited?
Unless there's new information brought forward.
I'm sorry?
Unless there's new information brought forward, there's a bunch of different reasons for a motion that can be brought back to for a decision.
Okay.
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, the other criteria in there is if someone from the opposing vote rethought it and brought it forward, it could come forward again too.
From the opposing vote.
Yeah, so the people who voted to close it,
If they change their mind.
if you change your mind, you can bring it back.
I see, thank you.
Is that it?
That's it, sorry, thank you.
Councillor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler. The chair through Sue. This land swap, that still has to go through rezoning, correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, we figure it would take about a month to run some of these systems concurrently. So we would need to come back to the June 28th meeting with a follow our land policy to deem this as surplus. And then we would follow through that procedure. It's slightly different because we're not selling it. We would be trading. And our planning department is confident we could go through the entire system and get everything approved to council within a month.
But we still have to rezone it because the land developers or landowners decide it would have to either yay or nay.
Yeah, well, we would zone it direct control. So there is no ability to appeal that.
Good. Councillor Butts.
I'm still trying to figure out the number 5 option. For me, I would want to keep that in and do a 4-month extension. Just so that then the facility is up and running and we already have something in place in the meantime. So to me, I would like to see a 4-month extension just to make sure that there's no gap in the services that these people are attending already, and that could potentially help them get into the detox facility a little bit quicker as well, because they already have some programs in place for addictions. So I personally would like to see it kept in and for 4 months.
Councillor Bronco.
Thank you. To all my colleagues into administration, to put a deadline on 4 months, what if it ain't done in 4 months? What if you get snow come down in the middle of September? You got a construction, you got a sewer line, you got an infrastructure, and everybody right now is running with their chicken or their heads cut off like chickens. What if this ain't done in 4 months? What, are you going to come back again and extend it for another 2 months when we just told our business community got 4 months?
It's two different things.
Well, but we're asking the government's down this 4 months to extend this for 4 months. Number 5. From what I understand, what we're debating, what if it ain't ready? Can we come back and extend it for another 2 months? I'm skeptical given deadlines when we haven't got anything on paper done, paper designs or anything. Thank you.
Part of part of the motion coming up later on the cost for trailers also includes that same address. How do the two, if council were to support this detox facility and council were to support figuring out a new location for the hub, whether that was a purchase of modular trailers or giving the space to whichever agency is going to be operating an emergency shelter hub, how do the two work together?
To the chair, so are you saying both are getting approved hypothetically? Like how would they?
Crystal ball?
Well, no, but is that what you're asking? Hypothetically, how
I'm
could
asking
they?
if both things were to be approved, how does that work?
There's certainly enough space. I think realistically, if both services were being sought after at this location, it would make more sense to go back to the province and say, you've got 15,000 square feet. Can you dedicate X number of square feet to this service?
My issue then, or my issue is that while I appreciate the detox, the need for the detox, especially regionally, we also have a great need for the vulnerable population that are in the community right now, that whether we approve this land swap for a detox facility in Wetaskiwin, regardless of where it is, what are we then doing? And aside from the homelessness coalition, and I realize there's work going on, I don't want there to be a blurred line between what the proposal is right now in terms of a detox facility, as opposed to the hub and the shelter and that programming that's going on, as they're two separate issues. Just making sure that not only administration, anybody else, probably all of our hundreds of viewers to our council meeting, understand that they are two separate issues. One does not change the other one, and the extension on the hub's current location has nothing to do with the setup of the detox facility.
Correct. So the request for the extension was simply the minister's office saying there will be help then, and it's to bridge that gap in services if the hub was to cease on August 10th. They are two totally separate proposals. They could realistically function on the same parcel if council so decided. But they are separate issues right now in front of council. Yeah.
That I wanted to make sure that was clear, like for council and for myself, and so that there isn't any question as to whether that's what's going to happen. But then the follow-up to that would have been, if council did support the location for that hub, then how do we work the two initiatives out of that same address?
Right. So I had a chat with the developer when we were talking about this originally, and there was some concerns about hub type services being provided too closely to a detox center. And one of the things that came back through discussions with the different ministries and service providers was that there is a way to actually make it happen. We would just need to make sure that they were separately fenced so that they were not interacting with each other. It can be done. It would just take some extra thought and potentially conditions, whether it's through council or AHS, putting them in between the different service providers.
Do you have a motion that we can now make and debate?
Yeah, it was the recommendation one that's highlighted on the screen.
Councilor Blatz.
I move that council approve the report titled Essential Services Support Option dated June 14th, 2021, and direct administration to action the next steps as outlined in the report.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Discussion. Councillor Nielsen.
So for clarity, we're jumping from that motion to the next steps portion on the bottom of the second page. Create a subdivision, land swap, deem the road, deem the subdivided property, and zone.
Correct.
And at what point do we make a commitment or agree to making a commitment with Alberta Health and addictions treatment and detox?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, sorry, I should point out that there is a 6th on there too about developing the comprehensive communication and safety plan. What would happen is if this, the discussions that I've had with the ministry's office are if this gets approved, then we would enter into, they would enter into negotiations with the land swap developer. So that developer is going to have an agreement with AHS under the impression that council will support a direct control zoning for that parcel once it's subdivided, and then they would apply to council for a permit for those services.
So then again, just for clarity, so if AHS and the developer are negotiating, at what point does the concerns about item number 4 get addressed?
On the previous page. And sorry, I probably should clarify. I don't know that the actual ministry is I don't know if it's AHS. It could be another ministry that's entering into that agreement. I should quit saying AHS. So number 4. So what will happen after this is I would go back to the minister's office and say, this is what council agreed to. These are the next steps we're going to take. And I would just highlight that extend the olive branch to other services at a later date. And then I would explain that we put a period after detox.
Okay, thank you.
And then addressing the concern about the extension on the current hub, I would say is out of this. And if AHS, who did we talk to? Public Health has things that they can bring to the table to mitigate the issues that we're having downtown, and they're at the table, in my mind, financially supporting those initiatives to mitigate those risks. That's completely separate than asking for an extension on this for a detox facility.
Through the chair, I'll make sure that that is communicated to the minister's office.
Councillor Hilgren.
So just for clarification, that is pertaining our lease agreement with 24/7 Hub.
Has nothing to do with this.
No, that's still in place, the eviction,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with it.
And yeah, they're not involved in this, correct? Okay, just clarification.
Anything else? Councillor Lonsdale.
Thank you, Sue, or sir, through the chair, Sue. These masks. Sue, just a clarification as well, since looking at rezoning and things like that, at some point in time, there will have to be a public hearing, I would believe, where concerned citizens or business owners can come forward.
Through the chair to Councillor Lonsdale, yeah, that goes through the deeming it surplus.
Okay.
We need to advertise and give the public an opportunity to speak to council.
Perfect, thank you.
Ready for the question? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6B, 40th Avenue designated left turn lanes and funding. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Administration is seeking council approval to utilize funds from the 53rd Street Traffic Signal Replacement Project that was completed in 2020. And we'd like to use that funding, or a portion of that funding, for designated left turn lanes along 40th Avenue between 51A Street and 56th Street. So in 2020, the traffic signals were upgraded at the 53rd Street intersection. The original design of the intersection was to have dedicated left turn signals for the east-west traffic. Upon further review, a dedicated protected left turn lane is preferred, which requires the inside lanes to be designated as left turn only. This section of 40th Avenue will become single lane through traffic with designated left turn lanes at 6 intersections. Since 2017, there have been 13 collisions at the 53rd Street intersection and 5 at the 52nd Street intersection. The daily movements along 40th Avenue are approximately 6,000 vehicles per day, which is 8,000 vehicles per day is the typical when volume congestion would occur and mitigation measures would have to be taken. There will be no impact to the truck route, and it will support active modes of transportation such as cycling. Prior to making the designated left turn lanes permanent, a pilot of 2 years would allow for the collection of speed, vehicle count, and collision data to ensure that this is the proper solution. The flexible bollards, line and arrow painting and signage would be required during the pilot phase. If this would become permanent, there would be concrete bump outs that would be installed at 52nd Street and 55th Street as shown in the attached plan. At this time, so the financial implications right now would be approximately just over $27,000 to be taken from the balance of the 53rd Street Traffic Signal Replacement Project. And then if this motion is passed, notification of the pilot project will commence through multiple areas, whether it's website, direct letters, and things like that. And then that would be followed up by the flexible bollard installation, line and arrow painting and signage.
Good, perfect. It won't let me pull the picture up now on my iPad, but that looks extremely, oh, now it popped up. It's extremely complicated. I'm going to be struggling. Looking for a motion, and then we can get into some questions and debate.
I move that council approve the use of funds from the 53rd Street Traffic Signal Replacement Project CP 00827 to complete a pilot project for designated left turn lanes along 40th Avenue between 51st A Street and 56th Street, Highway 2A.
Moved by Councilor Lonsdale. Oh, Councilor Nielsen.
Through the chair, thank you. How did we make the transition from a left-hand signal turn to protected left-hand turn and then more on-street parking? Like what transpired that made this new proposal more efficient than the first proposal?
Through the mayor to Councillor Nielsen, having this with dedicated protected left turn lanes is, I guess, a standard for traffic enhancement for left turns are traditionally far more dangerous than right turns or anything else. So having the protected lanes is a preferred option. This does allow for some parking on the street just because of the way that the left turn lanes would be situated on the avenue.
So we've gone from 2 lanes of through traffic to 1 lane of through traffic on a street that has 6,000 vehicles per day. And we envision that a single lane will handle single lane traffic.
That is correct.
And may I ask, why was there a recommendation in the first place for left signal turn on all these?
Through the mayor to Councillor Nielsen, so the left turns, or to have the traffic signals as left turn or designated turns is just assisting traffic make those left-hand turns without having to turn in front of or make a risky move in front of vehicles on the oncoming lane.
Anyone else? So you weren't here, so it's not fair to ask you, but as we changed the turn signals at 40th and 53rd, and we put or added in the turn signal that was there because it was a high collision area, why wasn't all of this taken into consideration or thought about when we were doing the improvements to that intersection?
To the chair, so when we're replacing all of the signals right now, we are putting in the dedicated left turns. We did not consider the protected dedicated left turn with the turn bay, simply because it wasn't the highway and that was kind of our busiest road. It was brought to our attention when we started to look at it. When Jason was still here, he ran it past the engineers and they ran it through a little bit of a model. And the engineers came back and said, you want 0 collisions? This is what you're going to do. And so we started to kind of think, okay, should this be the new standard moving forward? Obviously, anything on the auto mile, that's automatic. We already have it down Main Street. And really the only other area that we have currently with signals would be 40th. So that's when we started looking at this area in particular and starting to say, okay, should we do a pilot project with this? Because we also know that we have an issue with the trains and on 49th Street as well. So people queuing up. And if this works, we might extend that even back further and make it a more permanent solution. Should we have thought of it originally? Probably. But in our heads, we were like, it's not the auto mile, so we didn't consider it.
And I don't know if this surprises you at all, but I'm not an engineer and I don't do traffic consultations. I don't monitor. I don't do any of that stuff. So I can appreciate, especially I can appreciate the potential of a design change for the 53rd and 40th Avenue. Instead of changing everything that goes along 40th Avenue, because we get large trucks that are going down there, I see more potential for a collision on a truck trying to move out of that lane or not being familiar with, I guess it's divided all the way from the 55th. Why would we not get the left turning signal being functional, see how that works out, and then do a whole big pilot project or a potential design change?
Through the chair, we certainly can. We could get the light timing such that it was red going west and the arrow going east without a dedicated left turn lane. We could do that. We could look at it as an option and then monitor that. And then if we find that there's still collisions somehow happening, we could come back with this plan.
Councilor Runkle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not an engineer either, but I do a lot of traffic. This is suicide. If you look at the end of that road, you got the train tracks right there. Train tracks cross more often right now. We have 2 lanes that use that to get through. Right now, we're going to put 1 lane of traffic going all the way back. We're using that truck lane, and at the end of that street is implement services who bring their truck off 2A or 13 or 2A with combines on it, with discs on it. He's got no room. He's got no room if somebody's turning left. He's going to wipe them out. He's going to stop the traffic because he can't go through.
I would hope he would stop if there was someone in his way.
But if somebody's on the other lane, turning left, he can't go straight because he's got 2-3 feet wide loads. And if you kept that the same, the wide load could go through. Right now, a wide load cannot go through that road without those other guys turning left out of the way. Because when he gets down to that track, let's look at the track. You stop the track, we always have from what, I can't even see the picture up there. That street there, we always have 2 lines of traffic. Either go across the tracks, turn left at AC Dandy. But right now, you're gonna put all that traffic to 1 lane. All the way back, 1 lane.
I'm less concerned about the backup being on the south lane heading east, but I certainly hear your point about wide load traffic coming east or even west on either side of the.
Yeah, and we got
Of
that
40th Avenue
sidewalk so
having-
close to there. We got that sidewalk now, it's so close, and if he has a wide load, somebody's in there, he can't. I don't know, guys. Maybe sometimes we should take a drive and see what we're doing.
Just for clarification, wide loads do need permits. And if for whatever reason the changes that we make are not feasible, then they need to find a different route. So I would argue that this is not a permanent change. We're not tightening up like we did downtown. And I have seen massive trucks come through downtown and a roundabout. So if they can make it there, I'm quite certain they can make it along 40th.
A dozer with a 8-inch blade on either side is not a wide load. It has to exceed it. A farmer has certain regulation. Maybe Keith can tell us what his width is. But a low boy coming in there, let's look at, prime example, let's look at Goofer coming into there to turn into his yard. He's got those, you can't make it because and also the other thing is the slope of that road. We're basically putting that truck on an angle this way because we put it, when we grind it, we made it such a high point on the crown of the road and dumps. My biggest problem, if we didn't have agriculture going down to that end, I'd say, okay, but we got agriculture with a disc, even 2 feet, and then we got a near sidewalk. And the guy can't straddle the middle of the road if there's somebody on the sidewalk.
The markings there are just paint, right? Like we're not, other than the bulb outs, the rest of it is just paint. So they can still have a wide load over that blocked out section.
I understand you, but
Yeah.
the other guy on the other side wants to turn left, he can't.
Well, they have to be courteous. There is only 6,000 vehicles a day. It's not that much.
Councillor Hillgartner.
Yeah, I think we better just proceed with the traffic light and this is going to cause major mayhem. Like I drive down that road very often and I really haven't ran into any problems, but what you have designed here is going to cause a major traffic problem. Once the trains go through and stuff, you're going to have like just the width of trucks hauling the tractors and stuff like that. Yeah, it's major. I don't see it working one bit.
Councillor Billingsley.
It's up to the railway track. If you have a train crossing, there's always 2 lanes. From there, but people are lined up 2 lanes, they're not turning left. If you have the first guy turning left and everybody has to go straight, the line backs up more.
Yeah, but it doesn't affect Cooper's property or him getting into his yard.
Well, I don't want to say it affects the property if you have that lane, 1 lane, if you have a farming implement. Well, the line is.
No, stops right there.
Okay.
Councillor Hanson.
I'm sure glad we're not engineers. Although I'd be in favor of Tyler being I think, a quasi-engineer. So Tyler, you talked about a light system, put a light
It's
in?
already, so when they put the traffic lights in there, there's already a turn signal built into that traffic
Yeah,
light.
but not
So you
functional.
just activate it. It's not activated right now. No different than the 56th and 40th Ave corner where you have
Yeah.
that dedicated turn light. So it senses when there's a turning vehicle there and activates when it needs to. So if we have that on 40th and 53rd, you can go north or south using that turn light from 40th Ave. So my idea was to try that, see how it works, if the collisions are still cut down or if it cuts down on collisions before we work on a pilot
Okay,
project.
and that would be where I'm at. If you're running a pilot, does it necessitate piloting 1, 2, 3, 4 intersections? And then creating parking on one lane that used to be a through lane? Because I gotta believe that the moment you take parking away, if you reverse it back, there'll be a lynch mob out there wanting their parking spot in the front of their house because they've always had it. I'd be in favor of a pilot, but not on 5 different intersections. And whether it's a traffic light or a single protected left turn pilot, okay, but to mess up the whole street on a pilot for a period of time, I think is fraught with problems. And I'm not an engineer, just to be clear.
Anything else? Anything else for administration? Who is an actual engineer?
No, but you know, guys, if I were to take my Bobcat, go down that road, that
We
yellow
don't,
one.
we get it.
We get it.
Thank you, Councilor
It's a
Brown.
safety, it's a safety. We're all crazy in this town drive, and ask Keith, he's the one. He's the one who gives the tickets to all the mental guys.
Ready for the question. Those in favor?
Was there a motion?
Yeah.
Who made it?
Who did make it? Somebody over there. Who? Thank you.
Oh, forget about him, Carter.
You better vote for it then.
Those in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Can we activate the left turn signal and see how that goes? Do you- No, it's already there. It's existing. The dedicated turn light will be activated. No. Item 6C, 2021 policing priorities approval.
6B?
6C.
6B?
We had a added agenda item. Welcome, Inspector.
Good afternoon, Council. This report in front of you today is to obtain approval for the 2021 RCMP policing priorities. As you recall, on May 10th, Inspector Durant's provided an initial overview of the results of the survey in virtual town hall during the May 10th Committee of the Whole meeting, and it presented the RCMP's initial 2021 policing priorities. Inspector Durant's has taken that feedback provided during the committee.
Paul, I don't mean to interrupt you. Can we keep side conversations to like 0, especially when somebody's presenting, please? I apologize.
Inspector Durant took the feedback from the Committee of the Whole discussion on May 10th and has incorporated that into the attached document, which provides an overview of the 2021 policing priorities. Once approved, Inspector Durant will report back on the progress made towards these priorities through the regular RCMP quarterly report. The first quarterly report is actually scheduled for the June 28th Committee of the Whole meeting. So with that, I will open it to any questions Council might have, and Inspector Durant is here to take any questions directly.
Councilor Blatz.
Do you want a motion beforehand or are you
Yes,
good?
please.
Yeah, okay. I move that City Council approve the 2021 policing priorities as outlined in the report dated June 14, 2021.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Comments, questions, concerns? Councillor Blatz.
Okay. First of all, want to apologize for the interruption there. I was trying to figure out if last time we had the policing priorities conversation, if that was in camera or if that was public. That was? Okay. So in which case, I brought up before that I wanted domestic violence to be on the list of policing priorities under persons crimes, and I don't see it on here. And I was just wondering if that's supposed to be on this list or if it's on a different list.
Through the chair to Councillor. It didn't come up in our regular survey as being one of the higher priority items. I can tell you this, that it is a priority for us, regardless of whether it's on this list or not on this list. That being said, if there's something specific, some sort of statistics, I know that Councillor Nielsen wanted some statistics on domestic violence particularly. We also have one dedicated position in our detachment as a domestic violence coordinator that reviews all of the domestic violence files that we have for compliance to ensure that we are following all the policies and procedures and also doing all the VSU referrals and all that sort of stuff. So as a particular item inside our detachment that is reviewed regularly, I would say domestic violence files are the ones that are reviewed the most. They are reviewed inside 24 hours. They are reviewed within 72 hours. And they're also reviewed by our domestic coordinator. And then any problems with those investigations are then rolled back to the investigator and the attending supervisor as well. So with regards to that, all that oversight, and the numbers, the statistics that we have at this particular time, it did not make it into the priority list.
Okay.
But it's still a priority for us.
For sure. Thank you.
Anything else? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 6D, Wetaskiwin Hub Task Force Transition Plan.
Good evening, Council. I have a report here in front of you this evening to provide Council with an overview of the transition plan that was the work of the Wetaskiwin Hub Task Force to help enhance safety and security in the downtown core while the Open Door prepares to wind down their operation of the 24/7 response hub in the Civic Building. As you folks know, on May 6th, the task force was created. Hub Task Force includes City Administration, Council, RCMP, FCSS, and the Open Door. This group met initially on May 6th to engage in meaningful discussions and develop steps forward to address issues identified by the broader community. On May 10th, Council approved a motion to direct City Administration to provide the Open Door with 90-day lease termination, of which the lease terminates on August 10th, 2021. On May 12th, after that motion was made, the Hub Task Force met again to discuss their expectations for a 90-day transition plan, given the decision to terminate the lease. So both in discussions with the Hub Task Force, the area of safety and communications came up as two different areas that needed to be looked at. So in looking at safety, specifically 4 areas that should be considered were identified. One is around fencing. The attachment I've provided in the report here provides a high-level overview of the Civic Building. Of course, it's this is situated in a way where north is the top of the page and south is the bottom. So in looking at the piece that's been highlighted there, you can see where administration, in partnership with RCMP and the Open Door, have identified where the proposed fencing would be. There is, looking at that diagram, the fencing is comprised of chain link fences with jersey barriers or concrete blocks to protect both the occupants to ensure that everybody is kept safe. And there is a gate there on the south side for entry and exit. So essentially that solution would provide additional security for businesses in close proximity to the hub. And by enclosing that back entrance and all the parking stalls on the south side would ensure that folks that need to get a breath of fresh air or occupy that space do so in a way that complies with fire code and ensures that they're not loitering in other other businesses there in the back alley. So and before I conclude that around the fencing, we did receive some feedback from a community group that is interested in working with city administration if council was to approve this evening to help beautify the space and encourage positive messaging with the occupants of the facility. So to move forward with this solution, administration estimates that this would incur a one-time cost of $15,000. The second piece around security was increased civic building enforcement. The group focused primarily on the use of a private security company that could provide additional security and monitoring of the civic building. Under this solution, security personnel would be stationed at the 24/7 integrated response hub while providing 3-block radius patrols, similar to the solution that was presented back to council in March. The private security company is able to provide 8-hour minimum shifts. And given that minimum time spread there, administration estimates a range of $6,300 to $10,800 per month, depending upon vendor availability and level of service desired. If council wishes a higher level of service that is more than 8-hour shifts, the cost would go up, and we would have to work with vendor to get more of a better idea of what those costs would be. Third piece is continued foot patrols. So RCMP and CPOs, as well as city administration, have received a number of positive feedback from downtown businesses since implementing downtown patrols. Council initially approved these patrols by the RCMP until June 2020. So in front of you this evening is a motion to extend it until August 10th. Approximately $20,000 of the initial $45,000 has been approved. And the RCMP inspector did not foresee an issue continuing to provide these patrols until the termination of the lease in August if council chose to do so. The last piece around safety that the Hub Task Force had identified was around an outreach program. Our CPOs do work regularly with Wetaskiwin FCSS to continue handing out water, cookies, and Gatorade packets to help the vulnerable population. We will continue this outreach program with support of Wetaskiwin FCSS and ensure that vulnerable population that require additional services be pointed in the direction of those when deemed appropriate. That's around the security piece. When it comes to communication, the task force identified 4 areas over the next 90 days and beyond that we need to focus on. The first is around listening to the community, the importance of maintaining open lines of communication with the businesses community, listening to the frustrations as they arise, and leveraging existing city tools such as What If Wetaskiwin portal to continue to engage and have this conversation with the community was deemed important. Engaging our community partners, we talked a lot about the importance of engaging other community partners and agencies to work together. I should note that since writing this report, Wetaskiwin FCSS has held their first meeting of the Guiding Coalition of Homelessness Committee, which is essentially a grassroots committee that is doing just that, engaging community partners from across the community to address the issue of homelessness in the community. The third piece around communications was promoting a 24/7 response hub, facts and figures. We noted the importance of working with the Open Door to help promote the distribution of facts and figures. I should note that not just the Open Door, but the RCMP and AHS also have statistics that we will look at expanding and getting that broader messaging out to the community, which leaves me with the last one around educating the community. The importance of working with our community agencies to better understand the current state of homelessness that we are seeing in Wetaskiwin, as well as using that information to educate the broader community on the complex nature of homelessness. The task force did recognize that implementing the communication piece should be a partnership between the Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee, which Council has approved, and the Guiding Coalition of Homelessness, which is a grassroots committee of social agencies and providers here in the community. Administration sees both of those entities being the primary driving force to oversee a lot of these communications and reporting back to Council as we move forward with that. So there are 3 motions before Council this evening that we would need approval on to move forward with the plan as presented. The first is to approve one-time funding of $15,000 to support costs related to fencing As I noted before, those costs are specifically around the chain link fence as well as the concrete barriers. The second is to approve term funding of $22,000 for administration to hire a private security company until August 10th, 2021 to patrol that area in 3-block radius as described in the report, noting that $22,000 provides a service level of minimum of 8 hours shifts. So if council was looking for additional service, we would have to most likely expand that budget. And the third is to direct administration and the RCMP to continue to increase their downtown patrols until August 10th, 2021. I note that we did present this to the chamber. I have received some feedback from the community. There is a lot of questions from the community or the groups that had contacted me directly around what impact that some of these solutions will have given the time frame that's elapsed and the time that's remaining until August 10th. I did speak with a physician here this morning that wanted to note the importance of a global perspective and the importance of all stakeholders working together to address the issue, and that it cannot be just one agency that can get us out of to help deal with this complex social issue. And I feel like the work that is happening right now with the Guiding Coalition of Homelessness is addressing that piece. That concludes my report, but I can take any questions that council might have at this time.
Council Manager.
I don't know if you heard that or not, but if we pass the motion to increase the downtown patrols by the RCMP, how does that affect the amount of patrols that you're currently doing?
Through the chair to Constable Billingsley. We've been increasing our number of patrols since we last got the funding for that. Initially, we were patrolling 6 days a week. I then, along with a couple other people, got feedback from the downtown businesses in the community. I conducted a couple of foot patrols myself, went and talked to some of the business owners down there. I got some feedback from them with regards to they really enjoyed seeing us there. We've seen a lot of you, and of course they had, because we were there for 6 days a week. That was on the initial rollout to try and put a lid on their safety concerns in the downtown core. When asked their feedback on how often they think they should be in the area, they said, well, they were a little unsure, which is to be expected. But they said 3 times a week. So then we dialed back from 6 days a week to 3 and sometimes 4 times a week. But we're trying to schedule that around specific times when things are busier in and around the hub. So at the moment, and just doing some quick numbers, we're about halfway through the budget that you guys have already established. And then, so keeping it with 3 times a week and or the odd extra patrol, we had some increase in activity in the last couple of weeks. So I asked my sergeant to put more patrols on. And based on that minimum amount of increase, we should have enough in the money that you have budgeted for to get us to August 10th. Now, if we want to see back to 6 days a week, then I'd have to go back, crunch the numbers and see how much the shortfall would be. But at this particular time, based on 3 times a week and the odds increase throughout the week when required, we have enough in the budget that was already been approved to get us to August 10th.
Thank you.
Mr. Nielsen.
Keith, you just made a comment there, so I'd appreciate an opinion, I guess. You mentioned that there's been some increased downtown activity.
Yep.
That may or may not be related to the hub, right? But given that increased activity, and yes, you can put some foot patrols on, but there's a motion potentially coming forward here for a private security company with a 3-block radius. What's your spin on that? What's your take on that? Valuable, not valuable?
It's valuable. It's another set of eyes for us as far as, but I have a temper it. It all comes down to dollars and cents and bang for buck. Private security company coming in, they're costly. They can be there, but they're specifically eyes for what's happening in that general area. Our members are in that area regularly. They make numerous vehicle patrols through that area a day, dozens, 15, 20, or sometimes the number. You get 2 patrols at a minimum from me, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, positively for me, myself. But the members are very constant, very aware of the issues around the hub. So whenever they're leaving the office, going to a call for service, and when they're coming back, they're ensuring that their visibility is seen there. Now, getting back to the private security company, what the private security company will give you is a set of eyes and ears that will be unbiased, has no skin in the game, will say, this is what I saw. It could in fact be a good witness for us to move forward with some charges or something like that, instead of relying on, say, another witness from the hub who's going to be less cooperative in providing some information to us. They are going to be a call and report. They're going to be observe and report only. They can't arrest people unless you give them powers to work directly with the hub, and they can then act as a normal owner of a property. So example, someone shoplifts in a store. That person can detain that person and call the police, and then we can go and deal with that. If a private security guard is hired by that particular store, they have the powers of the owner of the store. In this particular case, if they were just going to be hired by the city, looking after the area around there, they would kind of lose that kind of being able to actually physically detain somebody. That being said, there's still going to be eyes and ears, an extra set of eyes and ears in the community in and around that hub for observing and reporting any infractions that they see there.
Thank you.
Councilor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler. Chair to Paul. Paul, you said fencing 15,000, but you keep saying concrete barrier. Are the fencing going on top of the concrete barrier, or are you drilling holes in the piles or on the asphalt and putting a fence post?
So when we were first tasked to put together a security plan for around the hub, and I'm keeping in mind that this is now six weeks ago that we put this preliminary plan together. We were looking, and in my conversations with some of the business people around the alley and right adjacent to the hub, we were looking for a buffer zone between the two. So that's where we came up with the perimeter fencing idea to kind of contain that activity that's in there. But one of the biggest thing was to try and put help the hub with some control of who's coming and going out of that area by putting the fence on the south side of the building on the southwest corner. That being said, my next concern was if we put a perimeter fence around there, is it portable? Do we have to drill it into the hole? Can we make it there? Then my next piece is what keeps a car from driving into the fence and pushing it into anybody that might be in that area. So for a personal security reason, we are looking at putting the fence in and then putting the jersey barrier on top of the fencing supports. So A, it protects those that are inside from any motoring people coming up and down the alley. But 2, it keeps the people from inside moving the fence out into the alley and trying to take more space, for example. So the jersey barriers, those large concrete dividers, will serve 2 purposes. 1, to help anchor the fence. 2, to then protect those that are inside on the inside from any vehicle coming down the alley.
Anything else? Councilor Hilgerner?
Through the chair to Paul. So even if we did go with this fence, we're still not providing safety for the dance club or any of the business owners in the back alley at night, because you still have people on the other side of the fence that are going to be buddies with the people on the inside of the fence doing whatever they're doing. Is that correct?
Through the mayor to Councilor Hill-Gartner, I do believe, and Keith and Trent can correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea of the fence and the concrete barriers is one thing, but we are going to put up sort of a tarp or something there so that you can't just drive by and kind of see what's going on within there. So there would be privacy for the individuals of that fence. So it shouldn't be like a through fence interaction. That's the solution shouldn't be supporting that. To your point, somebody could walk out the south side of this and then still continue to loiter on the other side of it. But I think we're trying to combat that with the increased patrols, both of the RCMP and CPOs, as well as this solution is available as well to provide private security if deemed necessary.
Because right now I see it's too hot for them to sit out there. So you got two stairwells in that building, you know, one on the north and one on the east that they're all congregating right now. So the fence isn't going to solve anything. You're still going to have those people on the outside doing whatever.
You would regardless.
Well, I know, just the way it's all designed and stuff. All I'm getting to is we're going to spend $15,000 for a month and a half.
To stop the interaction between the people right outside the back door of the hub with any businesses that are adjacent to the back side of the property.
But you still got the people in the stairwells that are in the back alley. So you're not solving anything.
Yep. That's a really good thing.
I move that City Council directs administration to increase downtown patrols by the RCMP until August 10, 2021. We'll start with the easy one.
Ooh, Councilor Billingsley. God bless your heart. Comments, questions? I guess it's not really increasing. It's just continuation of what we're already doing.
We're keeping an eye on the budget as well as trying to keep an eye on what's happening. And we have increased. And another thing we're looking at is the date on the calendar. When there's some extra money around, that's for stuff to increase the foot patrols on those days.
Right.
This is also, the number of foot patrols is also increasing from the watch itself. This is not just people on overtime. It's also when we can schedule, when we have enough people working on a particular shift. In other words, we don't have anybody away on holidays or sick or whatever. We're also doing numerous patrols from the watch itself. The watch of the day is also saying, okay, the watch corporal is then saying to a constable, say, let's team up with one of Trent's guys and go for a walk today. It won't be perhaps a 6-hour foot patrol, but it'll be a 2-hour foot patrol. Yep. So with the increase in these patrols and trying to be proactive on when we think they're going to be needed more, we can then put a couple extra patrols on by keeping an eye on the budget and not going over what's already been assigned. As we get more people that are arriving, mid-July is another key one for us with several people arriving into the detachment. As those people add to the detachment complement, then we can then lean on them. We're less liable on the overtime side, and we can continue the foot patrols on a more regular basis, almost to a daily count, as we get more people at the detachment.
Perfect. Councilor Rob.
Thank you, Tyler. Maybe to council, or Paul first, I'll ask this question, Paul. That $22,000 for private security, that's 24/7?
No, 8-hour shifts.
8-hour shifts. Through the mayor to Councilor Branco, it's a minimum of 8-hour shifts. So if we were looking for a 24/7 option, we would have to reach out to the vendors, but in the interest, times that budget by 3 if we're looking at 24/7.
If my colleague's worried about fencing, because I have a problem putting $15,000 and tearing it down again, it's a throwaway, why not?
The motion on the floor right now is to extend the RCMP patrols until August 10th.
That wipes out the other one.
It doesn't wipe out the other ones. This is the motion that's on the floor right now.
Okay.
Anything else? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried. Councilor Nielsen.
Mike's not on. Okay, just make sure.
But now it's on because I found what I'm going to read here. I move that council approve one-time funding of $15,000 to support the costs related to fencing as recommended in the report dated June 14th, and the funding be taken from operating contingency. And I'd like to speak to that motion.
Moved by Councilor Nielsen. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to vote no to this motion. I guess I just got some inherent issues building a fence and incarcerating folks. I don't know. It just, there's a tone established there that doesn't resonate with me. That's it.
Councilor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler. I see no problem with the fencing. You might put it somewhere else on the other page. But if we're worried about the fencing, 15,000, why don't we either give that money to the RCMP to do extra patrols? Forget the fencing, because some of us agree it ain't gonna work. Why not take that 15,000 and give it to the RCMP for extra patrol? Because if he's gonna do extra patrol, he's gonna charge us. It changes the budget.
Councilor Lonzo.
Thank you, sir. Just looking at the fencing, guys, you know, I don't think it's totally a bad idea, but since we have to have a gate there for fire services and everything like that, I really don't think it's going to make that much of a difference of people going in and out and that type of thing, and creating less of interaction with the people in the alleyway there. So that way, I think it could be, in my mind, a little bit of a waste of money. But has there been any talk with the operators of the hub for throwing in any money for any of the things we're discussing?
The Hub Task Force, the Open Door did not attend the meetings where we were identified these solutions. They are in support of the fencing. Inspector has talked to the CEO of the Open Door, and they have got support for that piece. We have not engaged them about any sort of support for funding or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Councilor Billingsley.
I will not be voting in support of this. More so, we're less than 60 days out. That $15,000 could be moved to private security, whether it's 22 or it's 37, whatever it is. And I think it would be more effective in providing solutions to the issues that are having around the hub.
Councilor Blatz.
I agree with exactly what Councilor Billingsley said.
Ready for the question. Those in favor?
No.
Good little Joey.
I'll try that again, Dean.
Opposed? Defeated.
I'd like to make a motion.
Councilor Nielsen.
I move the council approve term funding of $22,000 from administration to hire a private security company until August 10th, and the funding be taken out of operating contingency, and I'd be open to a friendly amendment.
Yeah. Go ahead. I thought you were going to say, and I'm going to make an amendment. I was like, why didn't you make the amendment when you made the motion? Comments, questions? Councilor Billingsley.
I'm not sure who I'll address this question to, but is one shift enough to make a difference? Is most of the issues that are happening around the hub happen within an 8-hour period? If the answer is yes, well then obviously that would suffice. If it's spread across 16 hours, then probably it isn't. And I would like to know what your opinion on that matter would be.
So at least with our, because I mean, and Keith can help me out with this too, but based on our experience, we would probably look at where the times we have our most issues are. And that's what we would reach out to the vendor that's selected saying, you know, it's not we want patrols from 5 p.m. on, right? And do that 8 hours from there, right? So there's probably be some little bit of community engagement with the businesses just to find out what the problem times are. And that's where we utilize those 8 hours. If you want, again, if it's a broader point, yeah, then we got to spend more money and get outside that 8-hour window and add it up to 16 hours or 24 hours, but it's just going to cost more money.
Councillor Hillgartner.
Through the chair to the inspector, 22,000, how much more time does that give us with the RCMP? One officer, 10 steps, or?
Twice what you had and how it's gone so far.
Yeah, thank you.
Twice?
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
Twice what we've had so far. They spent $20,000.
Challenges with. Yeah, and just for councilors' information, when we increased the number of patrols and when we were doing it 6 days a week, it was becoming burdensome to try and fill all 6 shifts, right, on each 6 days. We get into a situation, especially this time of year when the weather's nice, when the members want to be away. When we're calling these members back to the community, we have to incur traveling time and that sort of stuff for them to come for that particular shift. So, and it's not like everybody lives in town and, oh, I can go do a 4-hour shift on double time and then go back home and still enjoy the evening or whatever the case may be. You have to keep in mind that a good portion of the members in our detachment area, or sorry, in our detachment do not live in the immediate Wetaskiwin area. So the commitment then is you can't do a half-day shift or you can't do a 3-hour or whatever. That being said, when all of a sudden now you're asking them to give up an entire day and drive back in here for the overtime, they get OT saturation and they all have the OT of all the other overtime and all the other shifts that they're doing or extending duty or court. And then those shifts start to get harder and harder to fill. So when we do say, okay, we'll just take the 22,000 and put it into extra patrols and put a cop on every corner from now until August, it's unrealistic that we're going to be able to fill all of those shifts all the time. So can I fill a good chunk of them? Yes. Am I going to be able to fill them all? I would be hard pressed to fill them all.
Councillor Black.
I said these exact same sentiments a couple months ago when we first brought up the private security piece, that in addition to the fact that it would be providing security to our downtown business community, it's also providing security to those that are within the hub to make sure that everybody's safe in there. And it's also helping member burnout from the police side as well. And so I think that this is a very important piece to have.
Councillor Millingsley?
With the $22,000 that was budgeted, or the term funding, how quickly can this private security be in place?
Trent?
Tomorrow. They've just been sitting waiting.
Just
Realistically, probably about a week.
a week, I'm sorry?
Yeah, because we basically just get approval, then we assign contracts, and then we get starting dates.
And the $22,000 that was suggested, what date did you go by to come to that 22 grand? So in other words, did you start as June 1st? So will that buy us more hours? Do you understand what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah, so originally it was a couple of weeks ago that I based that quote on. So basically, I don't know if it's in there, but of the monthly cost that I did from 6,000 to 10,000, that's per 30 days of patrol.
So 6 to 10 for every 30 days.
Yeah, for every 30 days. So obviously, like most of them will probably sign a 30-day contract. So if we do, it'll probably be 2 months worth.
And I would support this motion if we could have administration reach back out to AHS Public Health, as they were so keen to be a part of the solution on mitigating some of the issues we had downtown, on how much they were going to contribute to this as well.
Mm-hmm. So what would you hope administration would be doing? Seeking a portion of all, or?
Whatever they get. See how good our negotiation skills are. The mic's on, it's even friendlier.
Was Tyler's mic on? It was, okay. I would accept that as a friendly amendment to my motion.
Anything else? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Item 6E, 24/7 response hub relocation costs.
Good evening, Council. I'm here today with a report to talk about the overview of costs required to transition the 24/7 integrated response hub to a new location in our community. On March 22nd, you might recall that administration presented a report to Council with an update on our 24/7 response hub relocation efforts. At that time, we did not recommend pursuing the project as outlined. Had committed to participate in discussions led by the Open Door to identify sustainable and long-term location for the 24/7 integrated response hub in the community. On May 10th, Wetaskiwin Council approved a motion to terminate the lease agreement. My apologies for repeating myself a bit here. During the same meeting, Council directed administration to bring back costs on setting up a new location for the hub, as well as information on purchase or release of ACO trailers. So in revisiting our initial presentation on March 22nd, administration understands the business requirements to operate a 24/7 integrated response hub to include the following: at least 50 rooms, common space, and enough bathrooms for both staff and users of the facility, a commercial kitchen space, dining space, and another 10 rooms for staff, offices, and support workers. That information was originally provided to administration when we were putting the report for the March 22nd presentation. So to transition the 24/7 integrated response hub to a new location has two components, both land servicing and purchase of modular trailers. So as you might recall, we had initially on January 11th presented a servicing cost estimate for city-owned lands at 5800 37A Avenue. The original cost estimate for that at the time was $430,000. I have provided a copy of this report attached to the document. Administration has revisited that quote and revised the cost estimate to provide the minimum allowable standard. So what we've done is we've reviewed option 2 of that report and removed sidewalks, curb ramps, curb and gutters, and dropped the engineering contingency to 10%. So based off of that minimum standard and based off those assumptions, the cost of the work is approximately $125,000 for land servicing. For the purchase of modular trailers, in our initial presentation back on March 22nd, the administration presented a modular solution that would have had a total expenditure of approximately $1.4 million if purchased directly, or $2.24 if rented over a 5-year period. So that works out to be about an annual rental of about $448,000 if we went the rental option or the rental route. Since that time, administration has identified another option via a local supplier who's able to supply a used permanent solution for approximately $140,000. So this solution would be a 49-bedroom camp, which consists of 8 12x60 ATCO trailers. One trailer is dedicated to laundry, water, and washroom facilities. The cost of the camps are approximately $60,000 to purchase and another $80,000 to move to site, level, and hook up to the utilities, water, sewer, and gas. It does not provide any commercial kitchen space, dining space, or dedicated room for staff, although there are other options in our community, such as a city-owned commercial kitchen or partnering with another social agency, perhaps the Rock Soup, who are looking at building a commercial kitchen at the moment. The local option provides council with the most cost-effective solution to provide a modular trailer solution that aligns with the minimum business requirements to operate a 24/7 integrated response hub. So the total cost to service land, purchase, and supply a modular solution to operate the 24/7 integrated response hub is approximately $270,000. Our initial timeline when we revisited or presented this in March had estimated that this project would take approximately 15 to 20 weeks duration total. If approved, administration would have to revisit those timelines and provide an update to council on where we sit as far as the timeline is concerned right now. And that concludes my presentation.
Councilor Morocco.
Renting from the local, those trailers, would we have to provide a service road or sidewalks to that? If we just rented the trailer? And where, and then what location would this be located at?
Through the mayor to Councillor Branco, the location there of where the trailers would be located is provided. There's a little bit of in the attachment that's provided, there's actually a bit of a layout. So on the very back page of the report, or the very last page of the report, it shows exactly where they'd be located at that address provided, 5800 37th A Avenue, and how we might look to lay out if we only had 4 of them. Now in the local solution, I think we've got 12 of them. No, sorry, 8 12 by 60 Atco trailers. And as in regards to minimum standard that needs to be complete before we can put the trailers in that spot, my understanding is that we need to adhere to our land use bylaw, and so that's why the minimum standard is there, and I'm getting a nod from the CAO. So we have to adhere to our land use bylaw, and so that's why we would have to spend $125,000 for land servicing.
Is there any recovery costs from the open doors or government or anything, or this is totally our expense, which we never budget for, be coming out of what department?
Through the mayor to Councillor Branco, administration hasn't had any conversations with the open door or any other levels of government regarding this proposed solution.
Thank you.
So in my discussions with both the provincial and federal government, leases and rentals can be used through the operating expenses or any of the grants that are received through either of those orders of government. So I would make the motion that we put it out for a proposal. If somebody would like to come in and operate a hub and work through the operating expenses, where if the city fronted the money for it, we would be leasing it back to the agency based on their operational costs through whether it was provincial or federal orders of government, and then to work with administration. Councilor Rowe.
So your motion, Tyler, if they wanted to lease it back from us,
Correct.
What if they said no?
Then
It's dead in the water.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councilor Blass.
I can make that motion.
Okay.
Exactly what you said.
I guess it would be directing administration, put it out for an RFP on an agency operating a hub or operating the programming and emergency shelter. We could front the costs, get it installed, get it built, and lease it back to whichever agency wanted to operate. We can wordsmith that. Councilor Hilgren.
But this is the same address that we're doing the land trade swap. So how is that gonna be if that other one goes through? Is this stuff gonna be like?
That was the question that I asked you earlier on, because there's enough space in that location to operate both. They would just be fenced separately. They would be operating separately.
So we'd have to make sure that this is not sitting where they're gonna build or not blocking their access.
Yes.
To get into. And like, we just can't put trailers on black dirt. We're gonna have to have a gravel base.
Oh, you'll put a little bit of sand down too.
I thought indoor, outdoor carpet.
Yeah.
Can you
just want to be totally clear of what you're saying. That you want to do an RFP for an outside agency to lease back the trailers from the city of Wetaskiwin.
Correct.
So we will front the cash. Now, are you expecting a 100% cost recovery on this?
I guess it depends on how long the programming is operating. Maybe it's a source of revenue. I don't know.
Well, and I guess that's where my struggle is knowing what was brought to us on the land swap with this, that they possibly may be wanting to provide other service other than detox, that we go and spend.
This would be all a part of a bit of a conversation. You're not doing one without knowing the other. That's why I'm asking administration to put it out to an RFP, and if that includes whichever ministry is working on the detox portion in that piece of land, and it goes bigger than that, where it might have the ability to be branched off into programming and emergency shelter, then that's the conversation that's being had, not just going and setting up a camp and saying, okay, who wants this? Like, there's got to be some planning going on before any of that happens. Councilor Bronco.
Thank you, Tyler. Question. So what would go first? RFP for operation of these trailers or purchasing of the trailers? Because if we put an RFP and we get nobody, then
We're not buying the trailers if
or
nobody's
rent or
operating
lease
it.
and whatever, but what goes first? Do we make the motion what goes first? Because if we can't get anybody to operate it, what do
The
we do?
motion was to put out an RFP to see if there was an agency that was going to run it. We're not buying trailers without having an agency to run it.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So what's the motion?
That's what I'm telling you.
So we don't need to make a motion on the trailers today.
I didn't say it was on the trailers. I was putting out an RFP to see if there was an agency that wanted to come in and operate.
Thank you.
Councilor Bill.
Just further clarification. So if we put this RFP out and
nobody comes back?
Well, no. So let's say it costs us, I'm going to say $500,000. But they only are willing to lease at $200,000, let's say.
But they're not leasing at 200,000. They're leasing at however much a month for.
Okay, fair enough. So, but what if that dollar amount doesn't jive? In other words, we've got a $300,000 shortfall of what we're spending on it,
but if
what they're willing to lease.
But if we don't know how long the programming is going to be running, it's the same thing as us putting up $90,000 for the open door to run a 24-hour integrated hub.
Yep.
You know, it was our hope that this was going to be something that just got it going and then it was going to continue on. So this is me addressing the concerns of the city for 50 years of everything that we're dealing with. If we put out an investment of $270,000 to get that set up, and a lease comes back, and let's say I don't know how much a lease will on that, $10,000 a month. So $120,000 a year, they're in operation for 2 years. They move, find a different spot. We've had an investment of $30,000 on the programming that we brought to the city. And then if they run for 10 years, then that's the other.
And where would this money come from?
From, what do you mean? From the, like, setting this up?
Yep.
The contingent, the operating contingency. Sue?
Through the chair to all of council, I'm trying to think through the logistics of this, and I think what we could do is put out the RFP ahead of everything and make it clear in the RFP that this is our estimate, and it has to be a minimum of X numbers years lease to make sure that it's covered. So they would have to enter into an agreement for a minimum of that amount of time. We'd have to work through some of the details on on the RFP though, because this is new.
It is, I'm just trying to solve problems. Councilor Nielsen.
Thank you. I wonder if we aren't blurring our own lines, because in the essential support services option under the one we debated on number 4, provide support through a commitment. So this is coming from Alberta Health, the ministries and all the rest of it. A commitment to approve a permit for services related to addictions treatment and detox. And we put a period on that. But we also said, and they were saying in this document, or any other support services as deemed necessary. And an invitation or a willingness on our part to enter into conversation about those other services with Alberta Health, so that we don't become the landlord, the program driver, the overseer of programming. This statement in here that we took out with an invitation to have the conversation about, to me, ensures that we are not the driver of this whole thing, and that Alberta Health, and even through the presentation, we will reach out and help you develop programs, processes, and all the rest of it to meet the needs of the clientele. That's an offer from Alberta Health right now to deliver those other support services if the ministry decides they want to get involved in that.
But it's not us blurring our lines. That was a part of the request from the minister that you wanted to take out of it.
Absolutely.
Right, so I'm looking at it as two separate issues where this is a detox facility that Alberta, the GOA is looking at building, setting up in Wetaskiwin. That does not fix the problems that we have right now. This motion that I have now is to help fix the problems that we have right now. These are still operating as two separate programs. I don't know what you would call them. Operating as two separate things. If during that, if the city opens it up to an RFP and AHS or the GOA comes back and says, we can do that as well, then that's solved our problem. If they don't, and it's another agency that says, we can solve this problem, then that helps the city again with all of the social problems that we've had in the city forever. Sue.
I'm wondering if it helps the situation if we could table this, and then I could potentially speak to the ministry to see if they would be open to including those services at some point within that facility, or does it, because I get the feeling from Councillor Nielsen that there was the appetite for us to get out of the business of this and let the other agencies do that. So if we tabled this, we could seek to get clarity from them on what could be included there. Just an offer.
Councillor Billingsley. And I don't mind withdrawing, or I'm sure Councillor Blatz doesn't have any problem withdrawing her motion if that's the direction.
Yeah.
I'm good, thank you.
Councillor Blatz.
I guess my fear of putting it in the hands of the statement of any other support services as deemed necessary by the ministry is what happens if they don't deem it necessary until 2 years from now. So I guess that's my only fear with tabling this, I guess. No, well, like I'm fine with tabling it. That's totally fine. So that then we can get information back. Yeah, no,
Back.
I think that's good. I think that's good.
So I think Councillor Blatz withdraws.
I withdraw.
Perfect. Item 6F. Request for extension, current state of homelessness report.
Hello again. I'm here this evening to ask Council for an extension on a report to better understand the current state of homelessness within the community. In July 2020, as you might remember, although that is quite a while ago, Council did a direct administration to develop a plan to create a community-led strategy to address homelessness in the community. We talked about the value of a long-term plan or strategy, provide council with an overview of the governance actions and funding required to successfully address the issue of homelessness for the long-term benefit of the community. So according to the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness, there are 4 different types of homelessness: unsheltered, emergency sheltered, provisionally accommodated, and at risk of homelessness. So administration believes that a better understanding of the current state of homelessness in Wetaskiwin is required before proceeding with the creation of a broader and longer term strategy. Understanding this current state of homelessness is an essential first step in engaging our community partners on this issue of homelessness. There are 4 steps that we've identified. First is engaging community partners, which with the Guiding Coalition of Homelessness, which is the grassroots initiative driven by Wetaskiwin FCSS, there is already a platform operating in the community to have these conversations. The second piece is to conduct some research and connect with other municipalities that have done some of this work. The administration has done some preliminary research and has talked to municipalities in the region to learn what they are doing, but engaging the Guiding Coalition of Homelessness on this would be essential to ensure that we're getting a community approach. Gathering data, we would work with 20 staff from the Open Door, as well as AHS, RCMP, as well as any other agencies in town that are collecting user data to better understand the volume users of, or the volume of individuals in the community that are experiencing homelessness, and other things like demographics and other statistics to better understand the existing homelessness population. And the fourth thing that we said we would do is engage the homelessness population. So working in partnership with the Guiding Coalition to engage the homeless population, better understand their lived experience, and through those candid conversations, better understand the population's expectations, desires, and needs to help shape the form of any sort of homelessness strategy moving forward. Administration is requesting an extension to the end of Q3 2021 to now properly engage community stakeholders via the Guiding Coalition of Homelessness and work together to better understand the current state of homelessness in Wetaskiwin. When we initially put this motion forward, it was staff working with the Open Door, and the Open Door, while a valued member here in the community and holder of a lot of really good statistics from the 24/7 integrated support site, the Guiding Coalition of Homelessness includes members from other agencies in the community and provides a lot more of a robust approach to this work. So with that, I can open to any questions that council might have.
Someone want to make a motion? Councillor Hilgardner.
I move the city council approves the extension for the administration to bring back current state of homeless report by the end of Q3 2021.
Moved by Councillor Hilgardner. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Councillor Hilgardner blocked.
You gained a little bit of weight.
Ouch. I know. Anything else from administration? Oh, sorry. 6, what did I have you as? G. 6G, Councillor Billingsley.
Just move, making notice of motion for the June 28th regular council meeting in regards to property tax incentives.
Perfect. Thanks for the notice.
You're welcome.
Everybody's happy with staying here? Does somebody want to make a motion to adjourn? Councillor Lonsdale.
Don't we have an in?
Pardon?
We have in camera?
No, that's Cal.
We did that in Cal.
Oh, I thought we were going to do one.
We go back to Cal.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
We were done.
Yeah, we're done. We're done, sorry.
If you want to hang out longer, I'm happy to.
No.
Ready for the question? Those in favor?
Yay. One of those.
Sue, do we keep